I'd like to welcome everybody to our Wildlife Board meeting. What an incredible turnout. What a diverse group of sportsmen, of livestockmen, of enthusiasts of the outdoors. And thanks for coming today. We're going to have a presentation of our colors. So I'd like to invite everyone to please rise for the presentation and posting of the colors. You may be seated. During this time of conflict, we'd like to thank all of our military and service members that are actively serving and those of our veterans that have served in the past. Any of you that are present today, we thank you, or have family that are in conflict or prepared to be. Thank you. Just seeing such a diverse group of people, I ask today that as you put in your comment card that you will be considerate of the person sitting next to you that may have a different opinion. That at the end of the day, we all love the outdoors, and ultimately we have some major issues facing us. We have a declining resource. We have a booming human population here in Utah, and many issues that we've got to find an outcome. And I have no doubt that with the group that we have in here today, that we can solve some of those issues if we all put our minds together. I ask that we, the Wildlife Board members, we have an open mind, and we hear everyone here today. And ultimately, that I will tell you, I know that there's been a lot of pre-education going into this, and we'll do our best on our vote. But I ask that you look at the person next to you, or take note of someone that maybe had a point of view that you hadn't thought of. Reach out to them in the coming months, and let's work together to find solutions. I will tell you that seated next to me, and Director Shirley is someone that will listen to the sportsmen, and I've been incredibly fortunate to work with him, and I'm very excited in the direction that we're headed. With that, I'd like to turn the time over for Wildlife Board introduction. We'll start with Bryce.
Bryce Thurgood, Perry, Utah. Represent the north.
Carl Hurst, I live in Orem. I represent the central region.
Randy Dirth, I live in Vernal and represent the Northeast region.
Wade Heaton, Southern region.
Gary Nelson, Central region.
Brett Selman, Northern region.
I again will just tell you that with Director Shirley, you've always got an ear, and you need to work through some issues with wildlife that I think that he would definitely welcome that. So we'll first turn some time over to Stacy to kind of go through the process.
Thank you, Chairman. Whew, ever feel like you got a bunch of people breathing down your neck? It's kind of feeling that way right now. My name is Stacy Coons. I'm the Wildlife Board Coordinator. I also oversee the public input process for the state of Utah. So I appreciate taking a few moments today to explain why we're here, how this meeting came about, and how it plays into our public process that we have. So if you would give me just a few minutes to explain. The meeting today is actually an administrative rule hearing. It's not a typical board meeting that takes place with our rack and board process. It's a meeting that happens outside of that process. So I'd like to explain the two different processes while we have a room full of listening ears and I have the microphone and you don't, and those who might watch the video later. Our rack and board process has been in place since the early 90s. And over the last couple of decades, we've really found ways to refine it and to be able to reach out and to encourage more public involvement in it. We have a fairly transparent process at this time. So what I found in the hundreds of emails that were sent to me over the past month is that many people maybe don't know how to access the proposals or the recommendations, or maybe don't quite know how to submit their electronic feedback through that process if they can't attend a meeting. So I'd like to direct your eyes to the screen for just a second. This is the Wildlife's internet homepage. So this is your landing page. When you get here, if you'll highlight over hunting, and Mike is going to run it for me, you move over hunting and go down to the board and rack. There's an entire page here that is a treasure trove of information if you ever have some time to spend looking through here. But today I want to focus on the second link down, which is the meeting agendas, materials, minutes, and audio video clips. If you'll take some time and go into this, this is where all of the recommendations are posted. That first line on there that highlights 2022, that is the meeting dates and times for the entire year. We posted at the end of the year before so that there's plenty of notice as to when your rack meetings and your subsequent board meetings take place. It is updated throughout the year as the rack agenda items may change, but that is where you'll find the schedule for the whole year. Now, if you'll go back to the other landing page, this top section here you'll see is the meeting that we're at today. So everything gets posted on here. The first link is to the PDF of the agenda so that you know what's going to be discussed at the meeting. And then the link under recording is the actual YouTube link to this meeting right now. We post them prior to the meetings taking place so that when the meetings happen, you're able to watch them live. Once the meeting is concluded, the archive lives on here and you can go back and relive those precious moments anytime that you want. Because there's no information associated with this meeting ahead of time, that's all that's available for this one. But if we're going to scroll down a little bit, I'd like to highlight the last rack board tour we had, which was the December-January board meeting. The top part is always the board, the bottom is the racks. So here you're going to find the same information. You have the agenda. Under materials, you'll have what we commonly call the rack packet or the board packet, which is all the information that coordinates with the agenda items. It can be anywhere from 300 to 500 pages long, so I wouldn't recommend printing it, but I would definitely recommend scrolling through it. A few things that are different on this section is you'll see there's a line under feedback. That is all of the public comment that is received prior to those meetings. That's taken, the public comment is cut off 2 days before that specific rack meeting is held so that those public comments can be forwarded to all of the rack and board members for consideration during that meeting. And again, you have the recordings. Under the proposal list, this is probably the most important part. This is where you'll find a short video clip of what the agenda item is. And then underneath it, if you'll look under Kobe Jones, his was the Utah big game. You can see he was taking out the trail camera recommendation. Underneath it, there's a couple of links. One is to the memo that lists in bullet points the changes that he's recommending. There's always a link to a red line if it impacts an administrative rule. And then if the comment period was open right now, there would be one more additional link underneath that that says provide your feedback. And you would click on that and you'd be able to go into a form, fill it out, and submit it for each rack. So that's how you're going to find these recommendations. In about 2 weeks from today, the next rack tour will open up and you'll see permit numbers for bucks, bulls, once in a lifetime, antlerless, and CWMU. And all of that will be listed on here and open for public comment. So I would encourage people to use this process to be able to submit your opinions and to be able to be heard if you can't attend the meetings in person. Now, this is the rack board process. The meeting that we have today takes place after that. So once we held our meeting on January 4th and the board made a motion that impacted rule language, that rule language needed to be filed with the Division of Administrative Rules. There's a separate process set through statute for administrative rules. Once we file our rule, it goes out for a 30-day public comment. Now, this is because most agencies in the state do not have an extensive public comment system like Wildlife Resources does. So for a lot of divisions, that is the first time that some of the public is able to comment on those recommendations or on those rule filings. In our case, today will actually be the 7th meeting that we've met to talk about these same recommendations. But during that process, when the rule is filed, it does allow for members of the public to request an additional board hearing or an additional public comment hearing. So that's what instigated this today. The threshold was met, and we're required by statute to then hold an additional meeting to take public comment. So that's how you all ended up in this room today. Now, there are some things that the Wildlife Board does that do not impact administrative rule, and so this process would not come into play. Things like permit numbers, season lengths, off the top of my head, hunt boundaries, things like that are not listed in rule. So those decisions are made at a board meeting and there's not an appeal process that follows after that. So we just wanted to be clear on the two processes and why we're here today. Today is comment on the language that was filed in the rule. And then we'll go from wherever the board decides to go from that once public comment is taken. So as far as the public comment for the process today, we outlined it fairly detailed in the agenda so that there would be no surprises. If you plan to make a comment today, you'll need to turn your green comment card in by 9:30, and there's a box over at that table. I realize we're cramped in here. If you want to pass them down the rows to end up in the box, that's fine too. We will be drawing them randomly. And then every card will be drawn. So I know there were some rumors on social media that we were only drawing 5 and you had a chance. It's not a lottery here. We're Utah folks. Everybody here is going to get their chance to talk if you've taken the time to come out and submit your card. I will give fair warning. We will not accept cards after 9:30. We need to keep the process fair. Everybody has a 2-minute time limit. The display clock will be shown up on this wall here. When the 2 minutes is up, your microphone will be turned off. So just a heads up, pretty soon you're just going to be talking and only you are listening. So just know that we'll use both this microphone and the stand on the other side so that we can move through it as quickly as possible and still allow everybody the opportunity to speak. So I hope that has kind of explained how we got here and what our two processes are. And with that, I would turn the time back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Stacy, for going through that. Stacy does an incredible job in keeping the Wildlife Board on task and helping us through this process also. So thank you. With that, we're going to turn the time over to Wyatt.
All righty. My name's Wyatt Bubach. I'm the Chief of Enforcement for the Division of Wildlife. Basically, I'm just going to go over a quick summary of the surveys that the Division of Wildlife did over the past year, specific to trail cameras, or that dove into the trail camera topic to some degree. Mike, are you able to pull that up, that presentation? Make sure we can navigate through here. So while he's pulling that up, this presentation will be a shortened version of the more detailed presentation that we gave through the rack and board process. But it will hit on the key topics associated with trail cameras to give you an idea of the data that was driving recommendations as it went through that rack and board process. So as soon as that pulls up, we'll get rolling. All right, so like I said, this will just be a quick overview summary of those two surveys that we did. All right, so the first one we did was an emerging technology survey. We did this in March of 2021. Basically, that survey covered a broad spectrum of technologies that we're starting to see in the field that we wanted to gauge the public's perception as far as acceptance or resistance to. It includes things like trail cameras, night vision, the sale of data, how a muzzleloader is defined, and a whole host of different emerging technologies. In that survey, we surveyed 6,000 randomly selected hunters. Those hunters were individuals that applied for big game hunts in the last 5 years. Of those 6,000, we had a 35% response rate. Generally speaking, anything over 18% is a really good response rate, meaning that it adequately represents the population that you're surveying. So that 35% response rate is really impressive. After presenting that information, we were asked to do a trail camera specific survey. We did a trail camera specific survey in October of 2021. Again, we selected 10,000 randomly selected hunters, again, from that pool of hunters that applied for big game permits in the past 5 years, and saw a 26% response rate. Again, anything over 18 is a very adequate response. One of the main goals of doing a survey is to make sure you adequately capture the thoughts and ideas of the demographic in which you're surveying. If you look at the data on the bottom, the age and sex of our hunters in Utah. One sec. That's a representation of our hunting public in Utah. The average age is 43.4. We have 17% females that are hunting and 83% males that are hunting. As you do a survey, you want to as closely match those numbers as you can, or that will be an indicator of how well your survey did at gathering data from your demographic group. So if you look at the top, that's what our survey results showed. The average age of 46.7%, female is 15, and percent male was 85.
Please stand by. We have lost power at the facility. The meeting has been suspended at this point, and we will resume the proceeding as soon as possible. We are looking forward to a status update. We hope that this is a quick interruption and that we might be able to restore in about 5 minutes. Please stand by. thank you for your patience. It does look like the power has been restored for the moment. Systems are booting back up. Appreciate your patience. We will continue with the technical hold. One.
All right, so I'll start here because I'm not sure where recording stopped, but just a quick summary of this basically shows that the data that we received and collected from the surveys very well represents the hunting public in which we surveyed. So we do feel that all the data that I'll explain here in a second represents the statewide hunting public as a whole. So one of the first questions we asked was, have you used a trail camera in the past 5 years? And we didn't ask if you used a trail camera for hunting or for recreation or whatever it may be. We just simply asked if you used a trail camera in the last 5 years. 57% of the public said that they have not used a trail camera in the past 5 years. You'll notice at the bottom that 2% that used trail cameras used them for non-hunting purposes. So if you're looking at this graph, as far as it pertains to hunting, 41% of the general public has used trail cameras for hunting purposes, while 59% have not. Do you think trail cameras should be regulated in any way? This didn't delve into hunting or non-hunting purposes. Trail cameras are used for both, but generally speaking, there was support for regulating trail cameras with 52% of the general public, at least the survey general public, thinking that trail cameras should be regulated in some form or fashion. We then asked if the hunting public would support or oppose the use of internal storage trail cameras during big game hunting seasons. And so there was, support for the use of trail cameras or internal storage trail cameras during big game hunting seasons. However, it's essentially half of the hunting public. The other half of the public opposes it or is neutral to the idea of the use of internal storage trail cameras for hunting. So while there is support for that, it isn't overwhelmingly strong. When we asked about support for transmitting trail cameras during big game hunting season, you see quite a drastic increase in those that oppose that, with 67% in opposition, well over half of the individual surveys in opposition of the use of internal storage trail cameras for hunting purposes. A small amount of support at roughly 20%, and with 13% being neutral. The next two slides I want to go over deal kind of with season dates or the support or lack of support for having certain restrictions on trail cameras. So we use two states around us as examples that have different regulations as it pertains to season dates. Arizona here has an outright ban on all trail cameras year-round as it pertains to taking or aiding in the take of wildlife. You can see that the public as a whole, over half of the surveyed public does not want an outright ban on cameras year-round. However, if you look at that opposition portion as I transition to this next slide, you see that it's reduced. Nevada has a ban on trail cameras. However, it's season-based, and it varies depending on if it's a transmitting camera or not. But the overall takeaway from these two slides that's important to note is that the hunting public in Utah doesn't want an outright ban, or appears to not want an outright ban on cameras. They're more receptive to a seasonal closure on trail cameras. And then just a quick summary of this data. Basically, it shows support for regulating trail camera use in general. There's higher levels of support for regulating transmitting trail cameras, and there's more support for a seasonal closure rather than an outright ban, a year-round ban on cameras. So that's just a quick overview of the data that was collected. For those that didn't see the rack and board process a couple months ago, gives you kind of an overview of what those results look like and how the division and board ultimately looked at the recommendation.
Thank you, Wyatt. We'll turn the time over to Colby.
Wyatt's 2 minutes was up, apparently. So what I wanted to talk about is how did we get here? Like, what was the road to regulating trail cameras, and make sure everyone understands some process issues. Were we good, Stacy?
We are at 9:29, so we'll do our final call for comment coverage. You got 1 minute.
Okay. So after this passed, I've had a lot of folks call me with a lot of confusion about how the Division of Wildlife works, how it's regulated, how regulations are made. And so I just wanted to touch on some of that. The Division of Wildlife Resources is part of the executive branch, right? And the governor leads the executive branch. So ultimately, if you follow the chain of command, the Division of Wildlife reports to the governor. And the way that the legislative branch fits into that is that they wrote the enabling code for the Division of Wildlife. So Title 23 of the Utah State Code is the code that gives us our authority and power under that, right? And in that code, they also authorize the governor to form the Wildlife Board, right? So there's the executive branch, legislative branch. I feel like I'm back in like the government lesson in like junior high. But the legislature authorizes us to manage wildlife, and then they authorize the Wildlife Board to get into the specifics, basically. So then it's our job when we come back to follow and enforce those wildlife laws and regulations. Now, another comment I've heard a lot is that, well, why is the division involved in the social regulation? Like, why do they care? And you've got to remind folks that a lot of what we do is completely social. There are biological recommendations and social recommendations, and it's a pendulum. And some of the laws and rules we have are more biological, and some of the laws and rules are way more social. For example, when we set, when we look at how many antlerless animals we're going to harvest off the landscape, that's where a lot of the biology comes in. But when we look at wasting laws, that's completely social. It doesn't matter on the biology side whether when you harvest an animal, whether you let it lie or whether you take it home. But socially, our public would not tolerate harvesting wildlife and letting it lie. And it's been this way since the end of market hunting, right? Since the end of market hunting, and since the public said we want some regulations for wildlife, some of those regulations have been social and some of them have been biological, and some of them are a combination of those two things. So onto the trail camera, this specific regulation, okay, on January 4th of this year, the Wildlife Board had approved a multi-part motion. So first, it made it illegal to place, maintain, or use trail cameras, transmitting or non-transmitting, from the end of July to the end of December for the purpose of take, right? And if you look up the definition of take, it does include pursue, right? So when you write take, it's not just take, but it's pursue an animal. Take, aid in the take, or attempt to aid in the take. Primarily, this was written for big game, but because we have overlapping season dates of cougar and bear during those big game season dates, this also applies to cougar and bear during that time. So the motion then listed multiple exemptions for power outages, multiple exemptions for ag, and for state and federal employees. So when we're conducting research. You know, it'd be nice if these monitors worked. Thanks, Mike. As part of this motion, there was a recommendation about using night vision to hunt big game. That was part of the motion, as well as engaging in the sale or purchase of the images from trail cameras. Can't engage in the sale or purchase of the image, and can't engage in the sale of storing the media for a price from trail cameras. So Wyatt touched on this, but I just thought an overview of how public feedback shaped this is important. So this was a year-long process. It was not taken lightly by the Wildlife Board, by the agency, or by the legislature, frankly. This discussion began in the 2021 legislative session with House Bill 295. And in that bill, which regulates the baiting of big game for the purposes of take, there was also some language originally that regulated trail cameras. Now, there was a strong public sentiment that that sportsmen were okay with this, but sportsmen and women both wanted to see this go through our public process, or they wanted to see it go through the board. So that language was removed, and added was that they wanted the board and the division to make a recommendation on trail cameras. So we started with 2 large public surveys and collected all the data. We wanted to know what the sentiment was from the public on these issues. After we had those data, we shared both the survey data and our recommendation online, right? It was online, it was available for public comment. And then after sharing it online, having it available for public comment, we took it around the state and presented it 5 times at 5 different racks. Now, as a wildlife professional, there's a group called WAFLA, the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And we get together with other folks to see how they manage, what they do, where we can improve. And I will tell you that no other agency around us has a public process that's as intensive as Utah's. We attempt to gather more public input than anybody, traveling the state, presenting again and again, getting input from regional advisory councils. So we did that again with this recommendation. So we went to 5 RAC meetings, presented the recommendation, and our recommendation was to put a season for take on trail cameras that we're transmitting. When we presented that recommendation, 3 of the 5 racks voted to go with the recommendation. And 2 of the 5 racks gave the board input that recommendation, they didn't feel like it was enough. They wanted to see it be go a little further, and they wanted, their motion was to remove trail cameras for the purpose of hunting, whether they were transmitting or not. And finally, we did present the recommendation a 6th time here at the Wildlife Board. Every time this was presented, it was allowed for public comment and public question. So what happened after the board meeting and after the regulation was filed? Members of the public wanted to give additional input. That's why we're here today. So today, it's a separate hearing, completely distinct from the normal RAC and board process. And there is a specific purpose. The purpose is to allow the Wildlife Board to hear and consider additional public comment. allow the DWR to respond to questions from the board. So the board can ask the DWR questions and review the regulation of trail cameras used to aid in the take or attempt to aid in the take of big game, cougar and bear. And that's all. So turn the time back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Colby, for going over that. One thing that Colby highlighted that I'd like to highlight too is he talked about the Western Association of Wildlife Managers. As part of that, the board is asked to, every 6 months, we have an opportunity to sit on those calls where most of the states, their wildlife boards are called wildlife commissions. And so we have the opportunity to visit with their commissioners and their directors of those states. And so in doing this, there was a lot of discussion on what is going on in those other states and a lot of updates and a lot of time went into this. And so I appreciate Colby highlighting that. With that, we are now at time for public comment. Again, I would just like to encourage, I'd just like to encourage everyone to be cordial and please be friendly in your comment. We would like to, take your full 2 minutes, but if this is ongoing and you feel your comment has been stated and the board has heard that, then bring up the new information that you have. But if you feel that it's been reiterated multiple times, then you would not have to bring that up. We have a total of 73 comment cards. So with that, our first comment is our first comment is Wade Garrett, followed by Matthew Clark. You should have went to Vegas.
Can we get public comment over at this mic, please? Just in case we. Thank you very much.
I don't for anything. Wade Garrett, representing Utah Farm Bureau. And we're here to speak in favor of, so our policy is very clear. It's in favor of transmitting camera ban, but we've also worked closely with several board and RAC members to make sure there's some ag exemptions. And if they're using them for watering sources, checking gates, et cetera, those will still be available to livestock folks. And so we support that. And thank you for your time. And I didn't take my 2 minutes.
Kevin McLeod.
Yes, my name is Matt Clark. I currently sit on the Northern RAC. I'm in my 7th year there. Mostly what I wanted to speak to today is the integrity of this process. We spent over a year doing this and literally hundreds of hours talking to constituents. We had an open public process. And all of the RAC, 60-some members of the RACers stand by the decisions that were made. We stand by the integrity of the process. None of us are considering changing our votes, and I don't think that any of you should be either. Like if we can have 10 people can make an end run around a legitimate public process, then no decision that can be made can stand. You know, this whole thing will just be a sham. I myself will be resigning if this end run around the public process happens and this vote is changed. I know a number of other RAC members will be doing the same. I encourage you to respect the public process and the integrity of the public process, and I would ask you to let the vote stand as it was. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Kevin, followed by Don Pay.
Kevin McLeod from Plain City, Utah. I'm actually also a member of the Northern Regional RAC, but I'm here representing myself. And I would echo what Matt said. The process is a great process. It involves the public. It has involved the public in the survey. The survey is compelling. The information is there. I agree with those that say this is, to me, just the tip of the iceberg. This is where we start to control some of the technology and the excessive technology that's gone or coming into our public and our private or public lands in regards to hunting. I call it the mossy slope. It's unfair to the animal. It's time that we gave the respect back to the animal, and we go out and do our due diligence in hunting. I would also add, and I know that there's been a lot of talk about just the cameras, and some people, and a lot of the comment that I've heard has been in regard to their private use of a camera and using it year round to take pictures of animals. I get that. But when I'm on a horseback ride and I have to ride by number of cameras while I'm riding my horses, is there any right to my privacy on public land? I get the private, but I would encourage the board to stick by their decision and make this rule change. Thank you.
Thank you. Don, followed by Shane Price.
Yeah, so here's an article from 27 years ago when this wildlife board was established. And candidly, there was nothing to fight over. The Henrys were close to hunting. Ponscott landed 24 inchers. We had it out with the division because they wanted 2.5-year-old and 3.5-year-old trophy bull units. There was very few bighorn sheep, 9 desert sheep tags. So there's nothing to fight over 27 years ago. And all of you in this room, a lot of you in this room have been a part of making amazing. And these are just a few reasons why I would support the trail camera season. First of all, you got to understand a distribution bell curve. And a lot of the outfitters are saying we don't have any more monster bucks and bulls. Well, some years ago, there was a 380 5x7 bull that got away because we didn't have trail cameras and everything else. And the next year, that bull's 427 7x8. So, we're getting too good at killing stuff. Second of all, we do practice what we preach. We're involved in 2 massive hunting areas in Canada, and we don't use helicopters. We say, come and hunt. And I'll give you a side benefit of that. There are 2 guys, net worth about $13 billion. They landed a $65 million jet in Norman Wells, and they had to hunt. And they got the rams on day 7 and day 9. And they said it was the greatest experience of their life because they got away from the world and they had to hunt hard. So hunting hard is not a bad thing. The other thing is Utah is a place where we want conservation-minded hunters first. And we also want it to have where, we put the hunt back into hunting. The last thing that I will say is, we set this up so that the public hunters, the guided hunters, the private landowners all got along, and we all had a great experience. Last thing I'll say, if people want to be worried about something, there's millions of dollars being shoved into Colorado to bring wolves into Utah. Their judges just took them off the huntable list. They're endangered species in all of Utah. So we want something to fight over. Let's focus on what matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane, followed by Shelby Prince.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to start off with just 2 questions that I hope can be answered later on today. First question I have is, how can the rule change be enforced? There's little to no way to determine who is using a trail camera for purposes of hunting, who is using a trail camera for purposes of viewing wildlife. And I do not want to take away the rights of people to just view wildlife in their natural habitat, as many of us enjoy to see while we're hunting and looking at our own trail cameras. And then my other question is, how do you expect this rule change to vary the success rates in the state? Currently, for common big game general season hunts, we have about a 40% success rate. I come from a state where the success rates are almost 80%. Not saying that's good, but I'm just saying 40% seems low to me. And I'm no biologist, but I just want to state out there that I don't think the success rates are high enough to determine a ban on trail cameras. I will say that the polls taken kind of ambiguous. They did not come out and ask about a ban directly on cellular trail cameras. They said trail cameras in general. And I think a large portion of the people would support regular trail cameras throughout the season, as we saw 67 or 65% supported a ban on cellular. So I'm gonna go off on a little anecdotal. Growing up, I had an uncle that brought me into hunting, and me and my cousins would enjoy the day that we got to pull the chips out of the cameras and just sit around and view the wildlife in the natural state. We saw possums, raccoons, deer, turkeys, anything. We really enjoyed that, and I don't want to take that away from the people, as I previously said. I understand wanting to have a fair chase hunting. I believe everyone in this room believes in fair chase hunting. But the ban on cellular trail cameras can take away from the fair chase, and I'm all for that. However, internal storage does not take away from fair chase. It lets you know that the animals are in the actual vicinity, but an elk and a mule deer can travel miles a day, and you can't even be anywhere close. This past season, I did not have any success, and I had 2 or 3 trail cameras, and I knew they were in the area. So that's my time, but thank you.
Thank you. Shelby, followed by Casey Snyder.
Hi, my name is Shelby. I'm 10 years old, and I'm a kid who enjoys wildlife and nature. Last year, my dad and I put up trail cameras for the first time. This gave us an excuse to go camping and hiking a lot. I like looking at the photos of animals in their habitat. I have never seen a bear or bobcat in the wild. I hope to someday. The next best thing is to look at the pictures we get on the trail cameras. We got pictures of bears playing in a pond. We have pictures of bobcats. I like to see the pictures of the baby deer and elk. I love all animals, and I like learning about them. I don't know if I will ever become a hunter, but I don't think it is fair that just because my dad hunts, that he won't be able to help me hang and check the cameras and fall without getting in trouble. If he didn't hunt, we would be able to do the cameras, but I don't want him to quit because almost all the meat we eat at home comes from animals my dad shot, and none of those animals were seen on a trail camera first.
Thank you. Thanks, Shelby. Casey Snyder. Followed by Lonnie Campbell.
Good morning. I've probably talked more on this issue than just about anybody in here. And so I won't share my opinion. I'd like to hear many of yours. But I will say just 2 things. One is I'm appreciative of the board. I fully can sympathize with the discussions that have had the last couple of years. I've been in them myself, and I recognize those are hard things. And the second thing I'd like to do is express appreciation to all of you that showed up. I think the majority of you probably took time off of work. There's a heck of a lot of other places you'd rather be than at a meeting talking about wildlife. If you're like me, you'd rather be hunting and fishing than being here talking about policy. Fundamentally, what this boils down to me is we just had probably the most remarkable speech that's going to happen today. And in the long run, it is my sincere belief that we have to do all that we can to preserve those opportunities for our kids. And it doesn't matter whether it's this or other restrictions that we talk about moving forward. Our obligation as inheritors of this wonderful gift of being able to hunt and fish, it is our duty to pass it on to the next generation. And part of that discussion has to be about controlling our technologies as they are quickly outpacing the wildlife we pursue. So again, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate this process, and thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks, Casey. Lonnie, followed by Tim Pilling.
My name is Lonnie, but I wasn't really expecting to talk. But I'm just here as a person, that necessarily likes to do it as a hobby. I do like to use it as a hunting purpose as well. So I would be opposed of it being open during trail cameras or during the hunting season. I have not ever taken anything that has been on my trail camera. I have, my whole family is non-hunters. They love to see what I get on the camera. There's several people that just ask me what I get on there. I share my pictures with everybody. It's not that it's about taking, the biggest, head hunting or taking something, but it's about being able to go out there, spend time in the woods, set up my cameras. I know that people are all pissed off about seeing 20 trail cameras on one water hole. From in the areas that I'm in, I'm not necessarily seeing that. Yes, I'm not down south where the big bucks are, the big elk on these units. Those units are draw units anyway. So it's not like you can, take more than you want. Yes, you might be able to get a bigger bull and not take that, average 5-point. I'm that person that just takes whatever shows up. But with that being said, I am opposed to it as just a general person. So, I mean, there's a lot of us out there that feel the same way as I do, not coming from a big, group or anything else, that are unable to be here and speak for them, themselves, because a lot of people do have to work. But as a general public, just being a person, I'm definitely opposed of this bill being passed, during the hunting season and how it's going to be regulated. Because, I mean, I can say that I'm, as a hobby. So it's not, where is the guideline that says that it's open or closed? And that's all I got to say, I guess.
Thanks, Lonnie. Tim, followed by Reed Pendleton.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to meet with the board. So I just wanted to kind of thank the board, and I'm kind of reiterate the comments from the Northern Rack. I think this obscure that somebody found where 10 people can change the process. It's kind of a scary thing. I'm sure the legislature will react on that. I also wanted to say we went to the Rack in December. We followed the process. There was a handful of us at the Green River Rack that spoke for and against the trail cam ban. I am for the restrictions on trail cameras during hunting season. There's no question it gives you a significant advantage. They operate 24/7, wind, rain, snow. They're always running. And I don't think people that want to use cameras to take pictures of wildlife, the way I understand the statute, it will not affect them. So also I think that the amount of use on public lands is so significant now. People make the joke that they can't go out and, take a leak without having a camera take their picture. So it's a very extensive process of cameras everywhere. And of course you have the advancement of technology. I have spotting scopes, I have binoculars. None of this equipment was available, as Don alluded to, the way hunting was in the 80s. I mean, we have such a massive amount of technology at our disposal. I think making us kind of pull back and say, okay, maybe I should restrict some of the uses of some of my tools for part of the year. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Reed, followed by Paul Sallin.
Reed Pendleton. I drove up from Moab this morning. Just here for myself, my family. I think so for me personally, I didn't voice opinion or was never part of any of these surveys, because when I saw the DWR proposal that it was just going to be wireless trail cameras, as a public, I was like, hey, I'm okay with that. And so then here we are, and the board votes to ban all trail cameras, during a season. I'm like, well, wait a second. That's not what I had heard through the DWR. And so for me, that was like kind of a blind shot. And I think there is a lot of confusion. Like if hunters can't have those trail cameras out during a season, but other people can, like, how do we know that they're being responsible? And so then you get the public enforcing the law. And so then the public's like, hey, they shouldn't have a trail camera on this tree because it's during hunting season. They're going to rip it off. Well, what if I have a trail camera and I'm not hunting that unit? Like that's destruction of my property because I want to view wildlife. So that, the cellular cameras are pretty obvious because they have antennas usually, and you can kind of tell what those are. But if I have a trail camera up and, some member of the public decides they want to enforce this trail cam ban during hunting season, they don't know whose camera that is. And so for me, there's a conflict there because I want to take my daughter and my son out and check cameras in units that we don't even hunt, but we go camping in. And so now I'm worried that, I'm going to lose trail cameras. I'm going to lose those opportunities with my kids for no reason, because, you know, there are people in the public, maybe not in this room, but there are people in the public that are completely against trail cameras completely. And so I don't want them to become the law enforcement officers. And in the end, my opinion is trail cameras are a scouting tool. And, you know, what's the difference between hiring a guide that sits on a buck all day long, every single day, and you show up in camp and you go shoot it? What's the difference between 25 people of your family coming and sitting on every single ridge, you know, looking for that 360 bull? You show up to camp and you go shoot it. Like, it's a scouting tool. Trail cameras are not weapons. And I think they should be treated as a scouting tool.
Thanks, Reed. Paul? Followed by Hugh Finley.
You want people to shoot large, mature bear. But in the fall, and you're baiting, you don't know what's coming into that bait station unless you have a trail cam. So what's going to end up happening is after 2 or 3 days, you're going to shoot the first legal bear that comes in instead of wait for that large boar that's coming in maybe twice a week. The other thing is I have a picture on my phone. I was hunting in the South Slope of a bear standing on top of my blind. Well, if I hadn't seen that, I wouldn't know that a bear is sneaking up behind the blind and actually standing on top of it, collapsing it. And if I was in there that day, I missed him by 1 day, he would have been standing on top of me. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Hugh?
Hi, Hugh Finley. I'd like to voice my opposition to the new trail camera seasonal restrictions, specifically with the
Followed by Richard Rosenquist.
specifically with the non-transmitting cameras. I'm a Utah native and love the Utah heritage and our culture. I have a lovely wife and 4 kids. They've all harvested big game animals without the use of trail camera technology, but they have used high-powered scoped rifles, scoped muzzle loaders, ballistic rangefinders, and the other technologies that are available. I've been running trail cameras for some time now, and I can honestly say that I've never harvested an animal that I've seen on my trail camera that targeted. We've tried, but it's actually never happened. So in my experience, do trail cameras kill? No, they do not. Do they increase your knowledge of the local animal age class, movements, patterns to increase the likelihood of harvest? Absolutely. The motivating factor for me is to gain knowledge about the elk, their movement, and their seasonal patterns, and the overall enjoyment of never knowing what you can capture on that image. In tough over-the-counter units, sometimes the only elk we see are those captured on trail cameras. So with young kids, it helps supplement the excitement, anticipation, and hope for the upcoming and or current hunt. I believe this new restriction will hurt do-it-yourself hunters that finally draw that limited entry coveted tag, and they don't have the resources or time to pre-scout the unit every weekend. I support the complete restriction of cellular transmitting cameras, but I am opposed to seasonal restrictions on non-transmitting cameras. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Hugh. Richard? Followed by Troy Justison.
Hi, my name is Richard. I'm here to represent myself. Voice my opposition to the ban of trail camera use or use of them on a purely seasonal basis. To be clear, I do support the ban or seasonal use of wireless cameras. I think that's pretty fair. As far as internal storage cameras, myself, I'm a fairly new hunter, probably especially compared to a lot of folks here. I've only been hunting for about 7 years. Had nobody to teach me how to hunt, had nobody to teach me anything. All of my knowledge came purely from reading books and then eventually going up and putting up trail cameras. If it was not for trail cameras, I would not have been able to learn about elk, deer, their habitat, anything of that sort. Additionally, I have children now who are now coming into age. One of them will be hunting for the first time this year. And one of the things she is most looking forward to, and she has looked forward to in the past, is being able to look at cameras, see the animals that are on cameras. And it drives a lot of questions from her. And I think that's something we should be very conscious of with our youth, is she gets to see elk calves nursing on a cow. And that drives questions for her. She gets to see bulls grow their antlers. That drives questions from her. Drove questions for me, drove research for me. I think we should be cognizant of that and be cognizant of our youth. I think as stewards of our land, it's really, really important that we share our passion and our knowledge for wildlife, for our wildlands, with people who are coming into an appreciation for that, because it's not everybody. And the more we can share that with people, the more we will have lands that are better cared for. And that's really important. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Troy, followed by Justin Prince.
Morning. Troy Justinson, Sportsman, Fish and Wildlife. Before I start, you started the comments already, but I'm a little bit uncomfortable when I hear the words wildlife professional come out of Kobe Jones's mouth. So love you, Kobe. Now, my comments today aren't so much on trail cameras. You've heard where our stance is. We supported the division's recommendation. My comments today are along the lines of Matt Clark's. This went through a process. Not only did it go through a public process prior to the legislature, it went through the legislature and then went through another process, and you as a wildlife board made a decision. It didn't align with what we suggested, but you guys made a decision. As I mentioned before in several of my comments, I've been doing this for 20 some odd years. I've come before this wildlife board, got my teeth kicked in, didn't get what we wanted, and never went this route. It bothers me that we don't get our way and we find some little loophole to come back. What even bothers me more is these volunteers on this board start getting threats. It's ridiculous. I understand the passion on both sides. Like was mentioned earlier, this little girl gave the best talk we're gonna hear today. The whole purpose of us supporting this is to maintain quality for the everyday sportsman. My biggest fear, if we don't limit technology, is we take that top end off. The majority of these guys behind me, outfitters, which I am one of them, show up these racks and says, you know what, the quality's gone, cut permits. Who ultimately pays the price for that? The average guy. Those are the permits that are come up. It's time that we as sportsmen put a few tools back in the toolbox so we can maintain that quality, so we can have the opportunity to go out there and chase some big stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Justin, followed by Justin Oliver.
Okay. I was just going to make a comment about the law enforcement aspects of this rule. I'm not sure, it's well understood by the general public that the division doesn't have the authority to limit somebody's personal private use of a camera on public land. And yeah, there may be few of those out there, but there's enough of them you should have seen I don't know if you watched the Facebook comment threads light up after these decisions were made. It's open season on trail cameras. What are we going to do as hunters when we start taking the flack for damaging the non-hunting public's property? It was joked that we would, Nevada, the hunters just turned in the cameras. I know that was taken in jest, but you know what? There's a handful of low information people out there that think it's open season on trail cameras now. How do we enforce that without damaging other people's property? There's I appreciate the RAC, the Wildlife Board process. I feel like we were kind of in the RAC meetings. The proposal was that we were going to ban cellular trail cameras. Everybody was in favor of that. Well, not everybody, but most people. So we flipped that on its head. And in the racks that happened in, the first ones we saw it happen in the northern, right? It happened after there was a public comment period when we changed it to all trail cameras. So why aren't we just going with what the recommendation was? Why don't we incrementally look at this? Where's the data that says that the cameras are actually affecting harvest in a significant way? I think it helps to select a more mature animal. Isn't that what we're always told that we should be selecting? Instead of shooting the first thing that walks out in front of us. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Justin. Justin Oliver, followed by Tim Prince.
Hi, Justin Oliver here representing myself. Normally I'd say, it's custom to say I'm happy to be here. I am not happy to be here and don't feel like this meeting should be taking place. As mentioned by so many other people, I would hope that it is addressed, the process that it took to be to this meeting. There has never been a decision in the history of our wildlife board that did not have 10 opponents to it that could recall something. I hope that this is addressed because it really does affect the integrity of this process. Second, I hope that those who are here today that talk about, we saw the proposal and we were okay with it, so we didn't, I hope that you will recognize that you can't sit complacent at home just because. I hope you'll learn that be involved. If you support it or not, you need to be part of the process. Coming to the meetings, most people, I sit on the Northern Rack as well, and I can tell you there were very few people who attended to address anything. They just didn't attend. So if anything take from this meeting is be involved, come to the meetings and be involved. Even if you think, oh, it's okay, I agree with it, come to the meetings. Second, we should imagine ourselves, 100 years ago, 120 years ago, when a lot of our regulations in hunting first began. Can you imagine sitting in a room and there were those who were against putting seasons on hunting? There were those who were against regulating the hunting industry. Where would we be today if there weren't men who stood up and recognized for the future this needed to take place? I hope that you'll think about that. This isn't just about today. This is for the future of our wildlife. I am in support of this season of trail cameras. They are not taking away, as Shelby mentioned, I think she did a wonderful job. She will still have the opportunity to use her cameras and to see those things, but once the hunt starts, they'll no longer be used. Cameras can be used for scouting purposes until the hunt begins. And that is what I have to say.
Thanks, Justin. Tim? Followed by Marilyn Wood.
Tim Prince, I'm out of Centerfield, Utah. I was in favor of the proposal as submitted by the division. Is the one thing that everybody agreed, or most people agreed on. But what happened after that and what should be most concerning is the process after. And where we take something, put it on an agenda, and, what was to argue about it? This response at that January 4th meeting. But you took that away from us. And then when we talk about harvest rates, it's my opinion that the trail cameras have very little to do with actual harvest. You want to know what it's made the harvest better? Education, social media, internet. People are more educated. I'd given up hunting for a long time. I'd go do my weekends on the rifle hunt, and that was about it because I wasn't having success. It wasn't until I started reading and watching videos and all that I actually started having some success. Did it have anything to do with the trail cameras? I think not. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, let's not have jeering, please. Marilyn Wood, followed by.
Can I trade with Matt and then me come second?
No.
No?
We need to have
Okay.
it on that order. Okay?
All right.
Thank you.
I'm Marilyn Wood. I'm a county commissioner in Iron County, and we're ranchers on private, state, and BLM land. We're probably a little different than you guys that way. We have a CWMU antelope. It's antelope on the Zane CWMU. We promote youth hunting. A lot of our doe tags go to the youth. We're hunters. We've hunted all over the world. We've hunted in Africa and New Zealand and a lot in Utah. And we promote, we support the ban on trail cameras because the vandalism that we've had to endure. It's hard being a rancher these days. Everybody's against us. The advocacy groups and everybody else. So I just want to remind you a little bit about our grazing fees part of our grazing fees on the BLM goes toward the infrastructure. Fences, troughs, corrals, all of those things, cattle guards, all of those things go toward, for infrastructure, but the ranchers own those. And a lot of the projects that we do are beneficial to the wildlife. And we understand that. And we're great with that. And we love that. On one of our water troughs, we had 24 cameras. Now, if that's not harassment of the wildlife and our cattle, I don't know what is. They also did damage on the signs when whatever this big animal was out there that they were looking at, they broke off all of the signs so nobody knew where Bible Springs was. We also feel like we're monitored when we come and go as ranchers.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ryan, followed by Braden Shepherd. Ryan Durney.
Sorry, my bad handwriting. Ryan Deering. I'm just here as a regular, average citizen, representing myself. I'm not a guide. I'm not an outfitter. I got into big game hunting I've been involved since I was a kid, a little bit, deer hunt with my dad. But my sons really got passionate about big game hunting about 10 years ago or so. So this is how
We're experiencing technical difficulties again. We'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you for standing by. We are still working on restoring service from the Eccles Nature Center in Farmington, Utah. We hope to have another update in a few minutes. We are aware that construction is taking place on infrastructure about a mile from the facility. We do not know root cause at this point, but look forward to returning the meeting in progress as soon as possible. We have not been able to contact the site. We appreciate your patience. We just received message that the board has taken a break. It appears due to this infrastructure issue. We are standing by for infrastructure to return and the resumption of the meeting. No ETA is known at this time.
Have you grab a seat and we'll get started.
Chairman, recorder has been activated. We're ready to return. Please begin at when you're ready.
All right, we'll have you grab a seat and we'll get started right here. Just a reminder, we'll have Kalen Lemon up. But before he starts, I would just like to reiterate, after a speaker, we ask that there's no clapping or jeering. That's the same that we do at all board meetings. And so we've got Kalen Lemon followed by John Hanson. Go ahead.
Okay, you ready for me then? Appreciate it. First off, hey, my apologies. I'm one of the guys that set back through the whole process and everything else. I'm here now. Part of that was, it initially looked like it was going to be, cellular, transmitting cameras. It's now changed and now I'm here. But my apologies for being the guy that just shows up late to the party. Another thing that's one of my key things is, I know that all of us in here share a common goal. Better populations, better quality. That's what we're all here for. So in the end, we all need to come together on that. There's so many talking points I'd love to hit on. That little 2-minute thing cuts me pretty short, but I would love to see the data, see why and how, this actually gets us to that common goal. I don't understand it. I can see so many benefits to wildlife management, every different, way I want to look at it. But my biggest talking point, okay, is for your kids. My kids are pretty fortunate. We spend a lot of time out in the hills, but I can promise you, my young kids, my 2 8-year-old kids have spent tenfold time in the hills with me as their father, checking, setting, placing, monitoring trail cameras, more so than what they've been able to, hunting in this state. We lack hunter opportunity in this state. We lack hunter recruitment for our young kids and everything in this state. And this is single-handedly probably the biggest thing is I think we're hearing here now, the tool that is used to get our youth out and recruited. I think it's a very sensitive issue that we're looking at here, outside of, the emotion that's been pushed through against outfitters, guides like myself. I wanted to talk on, a million more points of that as well. I think the simple thing to look at is this is restricting our freedoms. I'm an American that truly believes let us be free. We do need to monitor ourselves. We do need to do a good job at that. We do need to have respect for the resource and the wildlife. I don't believe this is it. So I disagree with the ban on trail cameras.
Thank you, Kalen. John Hanson followed by Rob Hardy.
Thank you all for being here, giving us this opportunity. I was the same as he was. I thought it was just cell cameras. And as a guy who has used a cell camera versus a regular camera, I had all of them. And on a bear hunt 2 years ago, we used them both. And which area did we get a bear on? The one that had a card we had to pull out and look at and read. So I see the reason for those to be banned because I was one of those guys and I personally thought, is this fair? Is this right? Should I be doing hunting here while half a mile away, my camera can tell me if there's a bear there? I've taken a few bears in my life and cameras gave me the opportunity to say, that's a sow, that's a boar. Also told me there's a mountain lion in here too, so you got to watch your back. Cameras are more than just scouting, they're safety. I kind of want to relate this to fish finders. What's the difference between a camera and a fish finder? I can go see where the fish is right now, and I can change my lure until I catch that fish. I have never killed an elk or a deer off of my cameras, even though I have them out there. I've never done that. But yet bears, I have been very successful with bears, and I've taken all male bears. no females because of cameras. So please don't change that. And also my kids, they love these pictures of the elk and the deer. Every year we sit around the campfire on our cell phone looking at uploading those images. And I really appreciate the opportunity to show my kids, look, this is what this was doing. This is what this was doing. Look how they moved through here. Something that they don't learn unless they're there. And unfortunately, we're not always going to be here to take our kids hunting and fishing. So hopefully they can learn when they're young how to do it. And I thank you guys for your time and thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, John. Rob, followed by Parker.
Hey, how you doing?
Wilson, maybe.
So I'm against the ban. I mean, I thought we made laws based off science. That was the original thing that this whole thing came down to. Now we're making a justification for a social justification. This was never a socially advertised on social media when this came about. I mean, yeah, it was your normal process or whatever, but it was never on social media. I really don't think this or the baiting law never should have started in the legislature. I think it should have started in here. And the surveys, why can't we just survey everybody? I mean, seriously, we can send a reminder email to put in for your big game hunts, but you can't send a survey out to everybody, and then we get actual data. If we start taking tools away, what's next? And are we really trying to take down herd or success rates? Trail cameras don't kill, bad decisions do made here. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Parker, followed by Rick Millward.
My name is Parker Watson. I live in South Jordan. I'm missing school today because I felt it is very important for you to see my eyes and hear what I have to say. I think that you should not ban trail cams because it doesn't hurt the animals. Trail cams give me the opportunity to get outdoors and enjoy life with my family. Me and my brother don't always get along very well with each other, but we really enjoy taking trail cams together. Please don't take this opportunity away from me and my family. I'll know you make the right decision. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Parker. Rick Millward, followed by Scott Carter.
Wow, how to follow those little guys, right? Boy, where to start? A number of questions, a number of comments. I guess one of the first things that comes out for me is I'm against the ban on these cameras. First of all, what a Pandora's box and an absolute nightmare trying to enforce this. We're going to have the public enforcing it, and then all of a sudden somebody sees somebody taking his camera off. Guess where the anger is going to go? Now we're going to be enforcing hunters shooting each other's or whatever else they may do to each other. The enforcement of this is absolutely impossible. So as far as practically speaking, it's not going to work. Secondly is everything that I've heard here, as well as online or through everything that I've seen, I can't get a real definitive answer as to what the objective is for banning the cameras, except I don't like it. It's not fair to the animals. It's fair chase problems or quality of hunt. Well, number one, we didn't survey the animals to see if they thought it was fair. Number two, you've got fair chase. Each one of us has a different definition of what we think fair chase is. Each one of us has a different definition of what we think a quality hunt is. If we want to talk fair chase, tell me how fair it is to be able to shoot an animal 1,400 yards away with a high-powered rifle, or 800 yards away with a muzzleloader, or 100 yards away with a bow that we can do now. We want to talk fair chase. Is it fair to be able to spot them with a spotting scope over a mile away and then go in and hunt them? And I'm sneaking in on that little animal and somebody shoots it from far away. You see the problem with this fair chase argument? It is so ridiculous because everyone has a different definition. What we're doing here on focusing on these cameras is we are majoring in a minor problem that isn't going to stop anything. There is no statistical data to support this at all.
Scott Carter, followed by Rich Allen.
Yeah, I'm Scott Carter. I'm against the ban on trail cameras, specifically the internal storage trail cameras. I am for the ban of transmittable trail cameras. To me, it is against fair chase and ethics. As far as limiting technology, it's a hard thing to say when you want to limit technology, but you're okay putting a variable scope on a muzzleloader that can shoot 400 yards. I think trail cameras for people like me who work 50, 60 hours a week allow us to be able to be scouting when we can. We just simply don't have the time. I work in the manufacturing field in our busiest times of the year, from January to May. So why don't we go to the RAC meetings? Well, I'm working 60 hours a week during those times. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Rich, followed by Shane Greenwood.
Yeah, hello, I'm Rich Allen from Perry, Utah. I'm thankful to be here, have an opportunity to just say 2 minutes worth of stuff. Lifetime hunter, born and raised like in Brigham City area. We hunt South Cache mostly for the last 20 or 30 years. About 5 years ago, we drew out finally after 18 years of putting in on a limited entry elk hunt. We decided to use trail cameras to see what we could see out there. It became a wonderful hobby with me and my sons, my grandsons, watching the animals in their environment. Just like has been said, cow and calf elk, calf elk, suckling on their mom, just beautiful things that you would never see otherwise. It's become more enjoyable to us than hunting. It's given us a love and an appreciation for the animals. We just use the internal cameras. I agree. I don't believe in the cellular cameras. I think they probably are unfair, especially during hunting season. The problem I see is your time frame. Last year, we didn't even get into South Cache until the 1st of July because of weather. They didn't even open the roads until the 1st of July. So you're telling us we have 4 weeks that we can put trail cameras up to the end of July. It's not enough time to see. We usually keep ours up, through the end of August, first part of September. We never use them for hunting. As far as, I don't know that we've ever shot an animal that we've seen on our cameras before either. But the time frame is just not long enough. And usually what takes care of it for us is all the sheep and the cattle that come in grazing. Last year, South Cache was extremely overgrazed, just decimated the elk and the deer feed and everything else. There was nothing left. The elk were long gone last year anyway. So the cameras didn't help us in that. Anyway, it just tells us what's out there. Thank you.
Thank Rich. Shane? Okay. Thanks, Shane. Ryan Margetts, followed by Andrea Thornick.
Yeah, so I'm Ryan. I'm opposed to them as well. One of my points was just hit on about the seasons. You can barely get up until June, late June. You ended at March or in July. You go check your camera every 3 weeks roughly. You check it once and then you're pulling it. It does nothing for us. Now with our fuel prices through the roof, how can the average hunter like me or half of this room get up to even do any scouting without taking a second mortgage out? And after that, it goes right down to, it kills it for my son. He's only 5. He can't make it out on the mountain with me. He gets to go camping and that's it. But to see that kid's eyes light up when we either go in to pull the camera, because he loves it on the shorter cameras that he can go with. But when I pull the ones that are out further, they can't go on. We get back and he starts going through those camera pictures with me. And he sees a handful of calves or whatnot playing, not doing some of the other stuff, but just playing like him. He can relate. He starts cow calling and trying to make those sounds, and he loves it. You're taking it away from the future of our hunting. And yeah, you're killing our hobbies.
Andrea?
It's Andrew.
Andrew.
Sorry. So I'm here for myself.
Followed by Rod Hawker.
You know, I understand the limitation on the transmitting cameras, but for someone like myself that has a medical condition that disables them, and my kids have chose not to hunt, but they love helping me with my cameras. Some of my cameras, where I put them, I get them in late, and there's not chance to retrieve them until the next year. So my cameras are up all year, and I don't get to see what's there until the next year. And along with a lot of you, I have never harvested an animal that's on my cameras. And that includes cameras that are on family private property. So just leave it there.
Thanks, Andrew. Rod, followed by Gavin Watson.
I'm Rod Hawker. I'm a Utah hunter. I'm an average hunter. I'm a do-it-yourself hunter. And I support game cameras. I hunt off the road, way off the road. And the only way that I can understand what type of animals are back there moving around is through game cameras. I work hard to retrieve data back and forth to use those cameras. Now, your original proposal was around wireless cameras. And I quote your DWR law officer, Chief Wyatt Buback, who said 60% of the survey respondents favored banning wireless transmitting cameras for hunting big game. How did we include data cameras? All right, now, in 2015, we got a limited entry elk tag for the Central Manti. I was out with cameras. The elk that I took was a nice elk, and it was never shown on my camera. And how do I know that? Because it was a piebald bull, and I would know a piebald bull if I saw it on my camera. My son took an elk that we had saw one time on a camera. It was over 2 miles away north of where we saw it one time. And how did we know it was that elk? Because we could see we understood the antler configuration, but it was nowhere near the camera where we were at. So why are we even talking about using or banning data storage cameras? Now, we talk about this being a process. Now, this is part of the American process, and that's why we're here. All right, now we've had the process before, and the process was talking about transmitting cameras. And I'm all for that shouldn't be there. But this is part of the process. If you've had faith in the process before, what's preceded us in the RAC meetings?
Thanks, Rod.
Then
Followed
we need
by
to have the
Gavin
process.
Watson and Landon Corbridge.
My name is Gavin Watson. I live in South Jordan. Trail cams are very important to me. I have a lot of fun checking trail cams with my family. I really, really love baseball. I love baseball so much I play it year round. I have skipped an entire baseball tournament and also have skipped multiple baseball games just to come outdoors and check trail cams with my family and friends. I'm telling you this so you know that trail cams are very, very important part of my life. I'm asking you this. Please don't take this amazing opportunity away from me and my family. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Gavin. Landon, followed by Drew Paulus.
My name is Landon Corbett. It's going to be hard to follow up a little kid. I just want to stand here in support of the original decision to implement a season on trail cameras. Hunters have regulated ourselves and asked for regulations for 100 years. And those regulations have adapted and changed as became more effective, and our tools have become more effective. There's a reason we don't hunt deer in the rut anymore. There's a reason that we don't hunt deer in August with rifles. There's a reason that archery hunts are longer and rifle hunts are shorter. It's all adapted to meet the changing technology. Cameras are effective. We keep hearing all the time that I've never killed an animal that I've had on camera. Blank SD cards are just as much useful as one that's full of 200-inch deer, 400-inch bulls. Knowing where animals are and where they're not, 24/7, 365 for the cost of 32 AA batteries and a couple SD cards, that's effective, and it provides me information that I need to be more and more effective. Is banning cameras going to have an immediate effect? No, that would no. But over time, I think we'll see that our herd quality will increase. We keep hearing every year that quality is decreasing, and the answer is always limit opportunity, limited opportunity. I love animals, I love looking at them, but I love them a little bit more when I have tags on my pocket. So let's find ways to limit ourselves more than just limiting our opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Landon. Drew, followed by Matthew Wood. All right, Matt, you're up, followed by Kevin Norman.
Thank you. We are Matt and Marilyn Wood. Marilyn serves as Iron County Commissioner, and we own and operate a 100,000-acre cattle ranch in the dry western desert of Iron County. We have only one small stream of water and have developed 50 miles of pipelines to connect developed springs, wells to water tanks and troughs for livestock and wildlife. We both support the seasonal closure on all trail cameras for monitoring wildlife for taking big game, cougar, and bear. In our remote area, we have had valves switched, troughs destroyed, holes drilled in water pipes, mineral and salt moved or stolen, floats changed or broken, and hunters leaving gates open or cutting fences. When water systems are tampered with in that harsh area, it costs us dearly through loss of cattle. Wildlife also suffer. This board's directive from the legislature when establishing policy is to balance the habitat requirements of wildlife with the social and economic activities of man. You have a number of other rules that ensure wildlife have the habitat they need while considering man's activities. Trail cameras endanger critical wildlife infrastructure, perpetuate harm to those managing that infrastructure, and do little to enhance hunting opportunities. The added difficulty of managing land and water for wildlife with the increase in vandalism is not a sustainable future for our wildlife or our sportsmen. Thank you for your consideration and understanding our position that we highly recommend that you ban trail cameras for hunting totally without exception. Thank you. Marilyn Wood, Iron County Commissioner. Matthew Wood, rancher on private state BLM land. Zane, CWMU operator for antelope. Thank you. Also Iron County Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Matt. Kevin Norman, followed by Mike Wall.
Kevin Norman here today representing myself. I'm like Justin, I'm not happy to be here. Normally I love this process and I'm glad to be a part of it. Today I think it's ridiculous. I think there should have been a banner out front that said, "Welcome to today's board meeting, sponsored by money, greed, and the right or the mentality to kill at all costs." To me, that's why we're here. And I think it's jeopardized this whole process. There's been a lot of talk about our rights. I don't know how many people's aware of Amendment E in the Utah Constitution. It was brought up in 2020. It was presented by Representative Snyder. Went through the House, Senate, and was later on the 2020 ballot, and was approved with 75% yes votes. We do have a right to hunt in this state. In that Amendment E, there's nowhere it says that we have the right to kill at all costs. We have the right to hunt. We have to rein ourselves in. I commend the board for standing up and holding strong on their position. I don't want to get in the weeds about trail cameras. I was here in the first place talking about those things, but the process is in jeopardy. Hold your ground. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kevin. Mike, followed by Brandon Watson.
Mike Wall, representing myself. I hunt elk, 74 years old, got a bad ankle. I own 3 trail cameras. These are not transmitting cameras. I use them intermittently. I know some of your data was saying that there's about a 40% success rate. I wish I had that success rate. Mine's about 20%. And I take the first legal animal that I'm able to see that is going to give me a good, clean kill when the opportunity presents itself. My cameras are used both for seeing whether there's game in the area and also for other uses, just to share with family and friends the type of wildlife resources that we have out there. I've never had another hunter show up on one of my cameras, which gives you an idea of the more remote areas that I place them in. It's never been an advantage to me. It does tell me whether or not there's game that I'm hunting in that area and nothing further. I also have a different opinion about some of the data that's been displayed on the surveys. Some people interpret it as supporting the all-out ban that you decided. I interpret it as supporting the opposite position. I don't think there should be any ban on trail cameras, with the possible exception of those which transmit remotely. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Brandon Watson, followed by Ben Louder.
Brandon Watson from South Jordan, Utah, representing myself and my family. I've been involved in this process since Casey brought it before as House Bill 295. Obviously with COVID, we had to do public input online and I was involved through that process. A little surprised when it was brought forward to you guys and just as a cell camera bill, and it kind of evolved a little bit more into that affects me personally and my family. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think this is part of the process. I know there's been discussion about there's a process and it was voted on and it was established, but there's still process afterwards. And I think that's where we're at today. And I appreciate your guys' time and allowing us to come forth. So I've spent a life hunting. Grew up with my dad hunting, and he never harvested any animals when I went hunting with him. I've been hunting since I was 12 or 14 years old. I've never harvested an animal on public property. In the past 5 years, I started using trail cameras to maybe help me. I was fortunate enough this last year that I drew out a limited entry elk tag. Placed some trail cameras out, and I ate tag soup this last year. 14 years of putting in for it. My point in telling you this is trail cameras did not help me harvest any animals. It sounds like there's many other individuals in the same boat as me, where I've seen animals on my trail camera, but I've never once harvested them, nor did I ever see them during my hunt. So I just plead with you to reconsider the ban on trail cameras. It affects me and my family personally. You saw my 2 boys come up here who are very passionate about it. It's a big part of our life and we enjoy it. It's a hobby. It gets us out of doors, gets us off video games, gets us out with family. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben, followed by Patrick Milburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ben Lauder, representing the Utah Archery Association. First of all, I'd like to give a big shout out and a thanks to you guys as the Wildlife Board, as well as all of the RAC members for all the time and effort you guys put into these discussions. I want you to know that it is definitely appreciated, and we recognize all the effort and work that goes into this process. Concerning the issue at hand, the Utah Archery Association originally supported the division's recommendations as presented, which is essentially a season on transmitting cameras. Our position remains the same at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Patrick, followed by Brooklyn Talbot.
I'm Patrick Milburn, live in Sandy, Utah. I'm representing myself and probably 15 hunting buddies. My voice is one. I'm old, I'm into my career. It's these young little guys that you've heard talk. They're me, they're everybody else in this room. And if we don't keep these youngsters involved, none of us need to be here. No licenses are bought, no tags, no equipment. And as you know, equipment generates income that manages wildlife, not just big game, but non-game. 10% of almost everything purchased in relation to hunting, the funds come back to the state. The other thing, I don't have kids, but I have buddies with kids. We had a hunt a couple years ago. We had 8 people, 12 tags. Trail camera use was an integral part of those trips. We made 2 additional trips to southern Utah, ate in restaurants, bought gas, shopped at the stores, generated all that income. We won't do it anymore. The timing won't work out. Cameras will go in a can. Nobody's buying any cameras. No income's coming back. My entire career is because my father got me into hunting and fishing. And I've made a career in the retail side of fishing. I've made it on the wholesale side. And when I was in the industry at a younger age, I made it a point that we got youngsters involved in the outdoors because none of us would be here. There's no future without these young kids. So listen to them. I do resent the fact that people said, oh, this is usurping the process. This is the process. And I really appreciate you being here. It's awesome that you are, and it's awesome that we have this opportunity. And I take you at face value that you're going to listen, and this isn't just an exercise. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrick. Brooklyn, followed by Chris Hatch.
Hi, everyone. I'm here for the 15% of women, apparently. So I come from a huge family of hunters, and my dad actually never included me in that because I was the girl. And then I met a guy who was like, why don't you? And I was like, well, I'm all for it. So I started out as the hiker. I was like, yeah, I'll go with you, putting up trail cams. And it was a huge thing in our relationship that was like, hey, let's go put up trail cams. We have put up trail cams. We do not have transmitting trail cams. I am totally fine for those to go away. I do not consider that fair hunting. However, the hours and the time that we have spent with children going to those cameras, we have had successful seasons and we have unsuccessful seasons with cameras. I do not think that cameras affect that much of knowing where the animal is right then at that right time. If it was, we should have been successful in every season, and we have not been. It has also provided a lot of value during our time of reviewing that footage with kids, and to be able to hear a cow call and a bugle with them over that trail cam has been more valuable than being able to hear it outdoors, because you can't always guarantee that happens. And so not only banning all trail cameras would take that away, but also banning trail cameras during the time of the rut would also get rid of that. So I think as a group of people that are here, and me personally, I want for all of us to just be responsible, respectful, and fair adults. And making sure that that happens is why we're here. And I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Brooklyn. Chris, followed by Rocky Delamonte.
I'm Chris Hatch. I'm here to represent myself. Just an average Joe hunter who started using cameras a couple years ago. I am the average age, exactly the average age of hunters in Utah. I must have misunderstood what was going on in the beginning. I've been involved in the process. I've attended RAC meetings. I had to schedule off work last night to attend this meeting today because I was under the assumption that when this trail cam issue first was brought to racks that the real threat of any ban was only going to be the wireless, the transmitting ones. Honestly, I scout. I spend a lot of time scouting in the mountains every year in a couple different units, and I learn more from scouting than my trail cameras have ever, any information my trail cameras have ever given me. So, I mean, if you're gonna, you know, to me, the ban is pointless. So, on the internal storage ones, because you've still got to hike in and check those cameras anyways. And I mean, it just gives me more purpose to get out in the hills anyways. I think if the tools that we use as hunters is an issue, and we're killing too many animals, maybe also we need to look at the return of investment on the millions of dollars that are put into our wildlife habitat each year. Because if we're slaughtering them, and our populations are that bad, then we need to maybe look at the return of investment on all that money. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Rocky, followed by Don Worthington.
Hello, I'm Rocky Dedamonte. I drove up from Hurricane just last night. I am fortunate enough to be able to hunt full-time for a living. I work as a cameraman and also a licensed guide with the state of Utah. I haven't guided on public land in several years, though. So my biggest concern with this ban is that we're making this legislation off of a survey that was, I mean, really 2,300 people representing an entire state. I don't think, and where largely most of the public discourse has been one-sided, I feel like that could have been reflected in the survey. And I don't think that telling people who've spent a lot of their hard-earned dollars on acquiring trail cameras, shop owners who are now going to be out inventory because people not buying trail cameras, I don't think it's fair to them to just look at them and say, well, we did a survey. I think we can do better than that. Also, I want to speak for the little guy who has to, well, not the little guy who has to, but the average Joe who works 40 hours a week. I think this gives a huge leg up to guys like me and guides and outfitters who can go out and glass and scout basically as much as we want to. Whereas the little guy now can't have a camera right next to ours and know about the same deer we know about. I was actually surprised to hear Kalen come out against the ban. I think that's very selfless of him because I do believe it would give guides and outfitters a big leg up over the average Joe who has to go work a 9 to 5. So thank you.
Thanks, Rocky. Don, followed by Guy Adair.
So my name is Don Worthington. I'm actually here representing my 15-year-old daughter, Chloe. She is a sophomore in high school and couldn't make it. She's got a couple tests. So I'm reading her statements. Hello, my name is Chloe Worthington. I'm 15 years old and I enjoy bow hunting for elk and trail cameras. I've heard that many people think trail cameras are unfair because they help hunters. Well, I can tell you this. My dad and I have about 10 cameras that we use where we elk hunt. I can also tell you that I've bow hunted for 3 years and have not killed an elk yet. I've had a couple close calls. If trail cameras make it so you kill elk automatically, how come I haven't killed an elk yet? I can tell you why. Cameras don't tell you where elk are. They tell you where a couple have been. Knowing where they've been doesn't help you kill one anytime you want. There's still a lot of things that have to go right to have success, more than just knowing where they were once. Trust me, I know this. As a sophomore in high school, I'm learning about thinking critically, looking at data and facts and different viewpoints and coming up with my own conclusions versus just repeating what may be popular. History is full of stories of people who think critically and who didn't think critically and ended up in bad positions. If I'm thinking critically, trail cameras are supposed to make hunting unfair. That would mean lots of people should be having success because it's not fair for the animals. If more people are having success, then the harvest rate should be going up compared to when not as many people had trail cameras. Based on the data my dad and I could find, success rates haven't varied that much over the last couple of years. There hasn't been a giant increase in success. Thinking critically, the statement trail cameras make hunting unfair is not correct. The data doesn't support it. While trail cameras have not helped me kill an elk yet, they have helped me get out in the wilderness a lot more. They've led to a lot more time with my dad and sisters as we drive to checking cameras. They've made me exercise a lot more with all the hiking we've done as we check cameras. They've helped me to learn a lot about animals, where they go, when, and why. I've seen some really neat things like bears, foxes, and cougars, and I've spent less time on my phone, which my dad says is good. I really like trail cameras, and it would make me sad if we were not able to use them year-round when we are hunting. I would ask that you think critically about the data.
Guy, followed by Cola.
Hi, I'm Guy Adair, just representing myself and my family. Just sitting here listening to all the comments. I think my comments have changed a little bit. We've heard a lot of talk about this part of the process being an end run around the original process, which I don't think is the case. All of us that use internal storage cameras that get out there and hike the hills and make the effort to get out there and see the wildlife and take our family feel like what happened with the internal storage cameras being banned was the end run around us that use those that were part of the process or couldn't be part of the process. I couldn't be part of the process because I've been in the hospital a whole bunch this last year, so I couldn't be a part of it. I'm here now and I'm still running on oxygen from being in the hospital, but I just want everybody to know that it's something that is great for our family and our friends, and we love seeing the animals, and we just don't want to feel like we were shut out of the process when it was originally just for cell cameras, and all of a sudden all the cameras are banned during that time. So thank you. And I appreciate what you guys do for us as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Guy. Cola, followed by Jeff Hallows.
My name's Cole Perks. I represent myself, a couple brothers, and a few friends, all similar to my age. So I'm a recent estate planning attorney. I passed the bar just about a year ago. And I work my 9 to 5. So I purchased a few cameras a few years ago and began the process of getting way more interested in hunting. Before that, with the number of tags that were available to me and my brothers over the last number of years, it's been hard for us to have opportunities here in this state to garner an extreme interest in hunting big game. Since I've got involved with trail cameras, and I run, 7 cheap trail cameras, I have reinvested myself, and this has become kind of my passion. That's why I'm here today. I do support keeping cellular cameras off. I feel like that's a leg up. I don't feel like receiving, a picture up on the mountain saying that the deer I was after just walked across this trail is necessarily a fair chase. But I don't support removing all trail cameras just based on that. Picture that you draw a limit entry tag and it takes you archery, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, and you can only get out to scout a few times. I would hope I'd have the opportunity to see what kind of elk are on that unit that I've invested myself 15 years in applying for, so that I could have a shot, just a sliver of hope of trying to harvest one of those elk on that prize tag. That's what having a few cameras would give me. I don't need to know that it passed on that trail, but I would like to see what kind of animals are there, so I have a 20% chance. Thank you.
Thanks, Cole. Jeff, followed by Patrick Hogel.
I'm here representing myself. I'm old school. I live in a little town called Aurora. I'm half hour from the Pavant on my razor. I'm a half hour from the Pavant, half hour from Fish Lake Plateau, and I can go and do. And I had a trail cam one time. My boy drew a permit down on a big bull on the Fish Lake. I put out a trail cam, went out to check it, somebody stole it. So that's all I've done with trail cams. We talk about fair chase and what fair chase is. Our poor deer, our poor elk, when they're sitting 2 canyons away, of course, with all the technology we've got, we can see them. But we have to stalk them.
That's all my hunt has ever been, is a spot and stock. And I've been fortunate to kill some nice deer. I've had the fortune of killing a nice bull on the muzzleloader on the Pavant. And I want that for my boys. I've got a boy that's 42, one that's 34, one that's 38, and none of them have had that opportunity to find a big deer or a big elk. Back in the day, in the 80s, 200,000 permits in Utah, deer permits. And granted, we have gone down with them numbers, but the deer and the elk populations have also gone down. And what we've got to do to bring them back up, I don't know. I wish I had the answer. Trail cams, to me, is, of course, I'm from the country, so I get to go out and I get to do. I can go out anytime I want, and that's what I would do. I spotted deer, I spotted elk all the time, not with a trail camera, with my eyes and a pair of binoculars. And to get out in the mountains and do that, and that's what I've taught my kids. My kids don't use trail cams either. My one boy did when he got the elk, but we never did see anything on him either. But
thanks, Jeff. Yep. Appreciate that. Patrick, followed by Scott Moldy.
My name is Patrick Hogel. I'm from Salem, Utah. I'm here representing my children. I don't care about cameras. I don't need to kill a deer, but not one single tool that's been available to me has made a bigger difference in the impact of the enthusiasm and the ability to stick with a difficult hunt, like showing animals on a trail camera to my kids. My daughter, 12 years old, no interest in hunting until I began to show her trail camera pictures. My father, who's passed away now, was disabled from a stroke. If it were not for trail cameras, I would have had no opportunity for him to see what kind of elk were on the limited entry unit he was in. I have never killed an animal that I've got a picture of a trail camera. You've heard that over and over today. So there's a dichotomy. This is not intuitive. Trail cameras aren't doing what some people think they are, and they're doing what some people think they're not. I would like to see data. A survey of hunters is one form of data. I have a degree in wildlife biology. I would like to see an actual study. There's a lot of creative ways that we can address this problem. An outright ban to me is just, it literally is taking away one of the greatest recruitment tools we've ever had to get young people engaged in hunting. So here's some proposals. Number one, let's keep things the way that Casey Snyder, and I talked about on the phone last year. To his credit, I have not conducted myself well on social media, I will say that. But Casey Snyder, to his great credit, called me. We had a great conversation. We agreed. We all felt like what was decided was the ban on the transmitting trail cameras. And so we all felt kind of betrayed by the system. So thank you for this opportunity. It's beautiful that I'm here today, and I so appreciate you all. But let's do a study. Let's see, how do they actually impact harvest success? Because for our family, it doesn't. All it does is increase engagement. The other thing is, there's other solutions. On my traps, I have a trap number. Why can't we use that existing system to limit how many trap or trail cameras people have in the mountain? Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Patrick. Scott, followed by Dave Freese.
All right. I kind of wanted to reiterate what a lot of people have said, that the cell cameras probably don't make as much sense, but I do think the regular cameras, having the season to it, I think is a bit archaic, it seems to me, especially thinking that you only have until the end of July where I put mine out for elk. The elk are there through July, but by the time September is started, everything is moved. And so it only tells you what happened in the summer and not what's happening during the hunt. So it doesn't help to me much at all to even have the season. I do think that the disbanding or the removal of the cameras falls in line with, I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2018, Polly McLean, who's the attorney for Park City, was arrested for stealing cameras and other hunter items off of the mountain, such as tree stands. I think us removing this is pitting hunters against each other, and we are now having half of the camp, maybe not even quite that many, because it was only like 30% supported an outright ban on all cameras. But I think we're putting ourselves in, we're supporting people like her who are stealing directly from us. It's going to be impossible for the division officers to really be able to tell which is, whose is who. I like the last guy who just said, hey, maybe we could put some tags on there, and you guys could even probably tax us on it, because that would be a moneymaker for you, and I'd pay it, if I could do it. So anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Scott. Dave, followed by JL Larson.
My name's Dave Friess. I represent the Utah CWMU Association. I'm the president. And our board's position is just kind of what the division recommended in the first place, is that we support banning the cellular cameras. That being said, I'd like to speak to the process and just to this group generally. It's become the nature of our public dialogue to choose sides, pick a side, and let's go fight like hell to represent that side. And I think the side that we need to be representing here in this room is the side of wildlife. It gives me great heart to see this many people passionate about wildlife. But what we need to do is come together and come up with solutions that we all agree on, instead of just taking these really rash, kind of unreconcilable positions that just really create public dialogue that's not healthy. And so think about that as we're talking about these things, and we have these debates and these opportunities to talk in RACs and wildlife boards, and even at the legislative level, that we think about what our cause really is, because our cause is wildlife. And I promise you, there's a big green wave coming our way, and if we're not unified, we will get run over by that wave, and we will never see the light of hunting again. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Dave. JL, followed by Tanner Koshavar.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Public speaking is probably not my greatest trait that we have, but in front of me, I see a divided board. I saw a divided survey. I saw divided data, 50-50 on this, that we made a call on in a vote. I don't know that that's the necessary way to do this. I did hear an echo in a room today. My opinion and my speech it's changed dramatically, because there's an echo in this room that says transmitting cameras are okay to go away. We all recognize an advantage, a board that recognized an advantage. The due process that was in here in the original proposal was that. I've been back to the minutes. I've been back to the stuff of that. Then it was blanketed in with the process of these internal cameras. It's messing up recruitment of our young hunters. We had brave young children here in front of us, in front of you guys addressing the wildlife board. This is what I love to do. I relate to electronics. I relate to a cell phone. I relate to sharing data. That's the stuff we need to recruit these people all the way up through this, to the outfitters that are recruiting the conservation program, the stuff that's raising millions of dollars at our banquets, at our things, the things that Don's built for years, the echoes of this. The day I heard a threat to our wildlife board, I disagreed heavily on. That is not what we're here for over a $30 piece of plastic. The first speech in here by a RAC member was threatening to resign. I mean, there's another threat the minute we get to this, and this is not where we lie in this. This is Sportsmen's United, recruitment of young hunters that relate to these electronic items. I would strongly, strongly encourage this board in front of me to go back to the original proposal. Take the cell cameras, let's either ban them, put a season on them, put something in front of us that has their save face on your vote. That was what was proposed. Put this other stuff off the table into the recruitment fact and get with these young kids and promote it. Don't look at Arizona. Don't look at Nevada. promote what Utah has, promote what we have in front of us, and let these kids run the electronics. Thank you for your time. I have about 10 seconds here that I'd like to recognize these kids, including the board. Give these kids a hand of applause for bravely getting up here in front of us, in front of this board, and addressing them. These kids are tough. These kids are our future.
Thanks, Wally. Tanner,
Yeah, Tanner Coach Heaver.
followed by Doyle.
Representing myself. You guys have turned my speech into Swiss cheese, so thank you. I'm going to try to save everyone some time. But I can speak to being a trail cam user. I'm very passionate. I'm just going to go off the cuff. I've been running trail cameras for 20 years, back to using D batteries and film cameras when you could get maybe 28 pictures a camera. And at that time in my life, I was very heavy. I was, 14, 15, well, no, I would have been 12, but I was very heavy for my age. And yeah, I tried tie bow. Yeah, I tried all these things and I loved hunting, but man, it was hard to get up the hill with those chunky legs. So trail cameras, they brought me a connection with hunting. Yeah, I grew up hunting. I've done all that. I know a lot of you guys have too. But it's another way for these kids to connect with nature, but also connect with their bodies and themselves and understand that, yeah, if I get rid of some of this, I can go to the next ridge and the ridge beyond that. And cameras have just been a really important part of that for my life. And I echo a lot of the things in this room. I agree that the wireless cameras, let's start there. Taking the data cameras to me doesn't make sense, going off of 20 years of experience. So I'll leave that with that and let the next guy get to it.
Thanks, Tanner. Doyle Moss, followed by Ross Worthington.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for legislation being here also. Obviously, you can tell by the amount of people, there was a huge disconnect what you guys was going to do in your board meeting in January, because otherwise you would have seen this, because we didn't feel that any of the SD cards was going to be mentioned there. I just want you to know that as far as me and Mossback, we do 90% of our guiding on public lands. And I do support the banning of cell cameras only. But I feel private property should be excluded from all cell camera bans. Think of the wasted valuable time of their limited number of COs and the law enforcement that it would take to enforce this law on private. Even the fact that the division got a proposed only the ban on cell cameras. Instead of the Nevada rule, let's spotlight Montana. In 2021, Montana came through for their hunters, making it legal to run trail cameras statewide year-round. At the end of the day, the question is, will this really make a difference? If passed, a study would start today. Earmark it as a 5-year study, and let's see if the age class, herd numbers, buck to doe ratios increase enough to offset the difference in allowing hunters to pursue their passion as they see it. Then we will see if these changes worked or not. Science and studies are needed. It is my belief that these cameras are better management tools than they are negative to our herds. A lion study is working. Now we know they are killing every day, every other day. However the vote goes today, I will walk out of this building positive and continue to work for wildlife in Utah. Thanks.
Thanks, Doyle. Ross, followed by Kenny McConkey or something.
I'm here to represent just myself. I've been a part of the process and it's been interesting and educational. It's been also sad. I've watched in RAC meetings and everything, and I've come to learn that we as hunters, we fight against ourselves. We're gonna be our own demise. We're no different than a Republican and a Democrat, except for it's public land versus private land, do-it-yourselfers live against guides, new tech versus old school. This has become so subjective, and this is where a lot of the argument and frustration is where's the data? Where's the actual evidence? In our own surveys, which I will point out slightly altered, not much, but when you look at the actual survey that was presented at the RACs, the percentages were just under 50. And if you look, if we're making decisions to change policies And the hunters are supposed to have a say, and it goes through that process. Again, it wasn't supported by all the racks. You didn't have a majority support to put this ban of all cameras in place. It was under 50%. If we're gonna make a change, the majority is defined as more than 50%, and we're not there. We shouldn't be making that change. Now, does that mean it doesn't change later down the road or that we shouldn't? We're gonna have to review that and analyze it, but we shouldn't be making that change. The other thing is, comments been made of put the hunt back in the hunt, right? Or hunting back into the hunt. But by whose definition? Again, everybody's got a different definition. When does that hunt start? Does that hunt start in the spring or summer? Does it start the year before? Does it start when you're a kid trying to keep up with your dad and his foot tracks? Or a new guy that's never hunted before that goes out with a friend and his life's forever changed as he becomes ingrained into hunting? I would hope that the division will take the data and the response and follow the process. And again, that everybody's been out here that we can clearly see. I felt they didn't follow to begin with. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ross. Kenny, followed by Troy Hallows.
So first, I want to say that someone already touched base on this. This is absolutely 100% of the process. Some of us are unaware of the situation at hand when it happens. So it's nice to get a petition going so that we can continue the process to fight or support. That's the whole part of diplomacy. That's it, just it. And secondly, I'm a small time, average Joe. I have 12 cameras. I run maybe 6 a year. Especially with the fuel costs of today, I cannot personally afford to go to Vernal, to the West Desert, to Fish Lake, and to the LaSalle's in 1 year and pick up all my cameras by July 31st. It's not feasible. That is just the way it is. I personally have not harvested a big game animal since 2007. That is not to say that I haven't put family members on animals and I have not passed up shots. That's to say that it does not increase somebody's percentage of harvest. And there's one of our great public speakers and public figures that's a great elk advocate and wildlife and hunting advocate, Corey Jacobson, even said himself, most hunters will only harvest one elk in every 10 years, if at all. So where is the factual data that says that these cameras are increasing our harvest rate? You want to know how you really find out the increase of our harvest rate is by doing a public survey through all hunters that purchase a hunting license and get a tag every year. Not some public people that don't know anything other than what they're being spoon fed. You guys and all the racks are telling them, this is what's going on. This is some data, which isn't even from the state of Utah on these water holes. And that's what they're going by. They don't have the facts. They're not out in the field. I can tell you right now that some of my cameras are so remote that it's not easy to get to. I go back 7 miles and I get passed by people on horses. That's unfair chase. The unfair chase, dogs on bears. Now, I'm not opposed to any of this, but you have to realize that the regulation is not fair. And that's that simple. So that's all I got to really say. I mean, I got a lot more, but time's up. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kenny. Troy, followed by Bryant Johnson.
Hi, my name's Troy Hallows. I'm from Central Utah. I came here with a few things to say and just listen to the public. Maybe I've changed my view a little bit, but I'm from the old school. I'm probably one of the older ones here. I've got kids. I've got grandkids that want to hunt. And I have seen the population go, especially in our deer. I've shot a good bull on the Pavant myself. And hunted deer my whole life, hunted with my grandpa, my dad. They taught me how to hunt ethically, how to get out in the mountains and spend time there to find the animal. And I've tried to teach my kids that. I've got youth. But honestly, I applaud these youth that are here. That's great. That's what we need. But if you have a youth that gets into the mountains without the aid of a trail camera and can't see a buck in 10 years, we've got something wrong with our deer herd. We need to address our deer herd and our elk herd. You know how many big bulls that were shot on the Pavant back in 2008? The year that I hunted, that were 400 class bulls, there was a handful or 2 hands full. You don't see that now. Our elk herd is going the same way that our deer herd has went. And I would love to see my kids and my grandkids have the opportunity to hunt a big buck. But if we keep kicking this down the road and don't do something, they're not going to have an opportunity. Our resource is going to be gone. I am in favor of a trail cam ban of all cameras. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Bryant, followed by Jared Earl.
Bryant Johnson, Monroe, Utah. Been an outfitter and guide for 15 years or so. I feel that this is not a ban. This is a season. We have seasons on everything. We should have seasons on things. I don't think it's fair chase to have guides and outfitters going to cameras every day on the mountain with sending their guys out to find an animal to hunt that night. When they see it in an area, they send in the troops to spot it for the guy that will pay the most. I've lost hunters to other outfitters because I would not pay a hired person to go out and run cameras for that hunter in one specific spot. You see guides and outfitters that will sell that animal to the highest bidder. That's not what hunting's about, if you ask me. I think hunting needs to be fair chase. If you want pictures to sell, then go put your feet on the ground and get a picture of it. And don't depend on a bunch of little workers to go out and check hundreds of cameras for you so you can sell an animal to the highest bidder when that same outfitter is probably booking 4 or 5 other hunters. And if they're not the highest bidder, they don't hunt in the same area as that guy that is willing to pay that money for that animal. And then you get the competition of outfitters. They make bad decisions, their guides and stuff, once they do get on animals. Another outfitter's in the area. And I could tell many stories of this where one outfitter shoots over the top of the other one's head from further than they should be shooting. The elk on the pavant gets wounded. The 220-inch typical a couple years ago with the 500-yard muzzleloader shot on the Ponce gun gets wounded, never to be seen again.
Thanks, Bryant. Jared Earl, followed by Mike Schultz.
Hello there, everybody. I'm not the best public speaker here, so I'll try. As I've got older, I don't hunt as much as I did when I was younger anymore. Running trail cameras is my hobby. I run 5 or 6 on private ground. I happen to maybe have a deer tag in my pocket, but I'm not hunting for the deer. I just happen to have a deer tag in my pocket for a general season. So I won't be able to run my trail cameras all for half the year, just do my hobby, not the hunting part of my hobby. I've gone away from hunting. I like seeing the big old bull moose that I'm never going to have a tag for that. See a mountain lion come through. You don't see a mountain lion very often in person. So I oppose banning trail cameras. I'm all for banning the wireless ones, the transmitting ones. People need to get out there and put some boot tracks on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jared. Mike, followed by Jace Taylor.
Thank you. I'd first like to start off by thanking the division and the Wildlife Board for all that you do for the citizens of the state and the hunters and the wildlife, especially the wildlife. I'm here today representing myself as a sportsman, CWMU owner, a rancher, somebody that's ran dozens of trail cameras every year over the last 10 or 15 years or so. I'm in full support of the board's decision in January with the season dates and regarding to the season dates on the ban on all cameras during hunting. I do wish personally that the private property stuff would have been exempted. I think there's a different argument on that, but if that's what it takes to change where the course that our deer herds and our elk herds are on, I am in full support of the season dates even on private property. Folks, our wildlife herds are not what they used to be. Let's face it. We know that. We see that every day. Those of us that are out there, it's not. Partly because of technology. I'm not saying it's all technology, but that's the big portion of it is technology. Is it cameras? Is it scopes on muzzleloaders that I can now shoot at more accurate at 800 yards with the muzzleloader than I could 15 years ago with my 30-06? It's all of it. We've got some tough decisions to make. We've got to come together. We've got to do it for our wildlife and our wildlife herds. I appreciate and commend the board for taking the first step. We got to give opportunities to our kids. We're losing our kids because they go out there, they don't see anything. We've become too good at killing. It's no longer hunting. It is killing. When I can dial up and shoot an elk at 800-900 yards with a muzzleloader, 700-800 yards with a muzzleloader, whatever it is, that is no longer hunting. Folks, we're stewards of this resource that we have today for our kids and our grandkids. We're failing them. We're failing ourselves. It is not what it used to be. We've got to come together and make some tough decisions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Jace? Followed by Trent Lazenby.
My name is Jace Taylor, representing specifically myself. Thanks y'all for your time, and thanks. It's great to see everybody here. I think this is an incredible thing. I think most important, more than my opinion about trail cameras, is that we all think about how great it is to be here together. I worry about people thinking that this is a divisive thing, that this is fighters hunting or hunters fighting against each other. That's really not what this is. The greatest thing about wildlife management in North America is that we have rules that are regulated or endorsed by hunters, and hunters self-regulating. And I think it's great that we all get the opportunity to come here to work together. We're not fighting against each other. This is a great thing. All the regulations that we have right now that we all love, it once started something like this. There wasn't consensus about hunting dates or about how many permits or hunting bucks or even animals we don't hunt. So this is a great thing. And I hope that we all, look at this and remember this is a great opportunity that we had and that we continue to work together like this. I love trail cameras. I run trail cameras for myself, personally hunting. I use a lot of them at work. I got a master's degree, published a couple papers about run trail cameras for wildlife management purposes. And I use them with my family, my wife and my kids, and we all love doing it. That being said, I do think that trail cameras should be regulated. I preferred perhaps the DWR's original proposal, but I do recognize the Wildlife Board and all your efforts, all your time that you spent working with folks and all your thoughts into coming to what you passed at your January meeting. I think the reason that I support them is I think that it will help reduce the harvest rates specifically on, the older aged animals. And I hope that in turn means that we'll have more opportunities for hunting and that helps recruitment. That's my opinion. I understand that we need to be able to adapt as conditions change, whether that's the herds, whether that's the supply and demand. I think where we're at right now that this is appropriate. And, I really thank you guys for your time and everybody just for doing this together. I've learned a lot here and I hope we continue to learn from each other. That's all I have. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jace. Good to see you. Trent, followed by Mitch Carter.
I'd like to thank you for your time today. The first thing I'd like to ask the board to kind of consider, and something I see happening more and more frequently that's bothering me, is in the proclamation, there's a page that states that all our rules for wildlife are made by here at this board. Recently, we're seeing more legislation introduced that's going around this board to legislate things into laws that are not coming through this board in the way they should be. I've sent a lot of emails. Snyder has had the misfortune of reading a lot of my emails. I disagree in the fact that we have too many things coming around this board that are going to negatively affect hunters. If we look at what's happened in other states, it's had catastrophic effects in other areas. Nothing's being passed that's beneficial to the common sportsman. If you don't have money, you're not going to play. And I'd like to see that kind of hinged here in Utah. I'd like to see the board stand up for us. We don't need our laws legislated. We want them to go through the due process that was set up. I do not support the camera ban. I think all electronic cameras, if you don't have to manually check them, they're fine to be banned. We run a dozen cameras. There's a boy in the back row who puts 1,000 miles a year on his feet checking cameras with me. He sees a lot of images all year round. We get some of our best images through the winter. Mountain lions, bears, bobcats. We get to see coyotes do things that most people never get to see. We get fantastic images that I would hate to lose. Some of the reasons that we love our cameras is it saves a lot on fuel. It gives us a lot of family time. My kids, my grandkids, they all get to come out and go. It gives them the opportunity to hear from their grandpa and their great grandpa the history of the areas we go and spend time. The patterns of animals change. Sorry, I'm going to make it short. The vandalism that's going to happen if this passes, because people are going to not respect anybody else's cameras that are there for any reason, is going to be a hardship on our wildlife, on the officers that have to protect it. Well, thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Trent. Mitch Carter, followed by Reggie Swenson.
Mitch Carter from Beaver, Utah, just representing myself mostly as a hunter, sportsman, cattleman, rancher. A couple of things that I've just kind of pulled out of the meeting that kind of align with some of my thoughts. We all believe in a process, right? I think everybody can jump on board with a clear, very clear process. I feel like maybe this issue specifically got a little bit sideways on the clarity, and maybe that's why more of us are here today. Had it been a little bit more clear in the RAC meetings as far as what was advertised and what the outcome was, specifically with the transmitting cameras and the non-transmitting, I think it's been said pretty well today. Most people are in support of the transmitting, not the other. Another thing that I've heard a lot of today, family. There's only a couple things I'm really passionate. One's hunting, one's family, probably more so the family. And for me, the family aspect of it, I've heard nothing but good comments that have come from using trail cameras and helping us get our kids involved in hunting. That's where we need to be focused on, is getting those youth. One other thing, the unity. I support unity. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been said. We have to be united as hunters. We are kind of fighting over different things of opinion. I think we can all support data and real science. And I feel like, even a survey is not really data or science. If we had factual data and science, I believe that more of us could jump on board with whatever decision is made. But I don't think that we have that science and that data, and to be able to make kind of a knee-jerk reaction on just an opinion versus the science and the data is not the correct thing. So I appreciate your time. I'm grateful for what you guys do and support just leaving the trail camera thing as it is. Thanks.
Thanks, Mitch. Reggie, followed by Mark Thompson.
I'll be brief. Pretty much everything I had written down has been said. So I just want to thank everyone, especially the board. A lot of us drove from southern Utah, bad snowstorm. A lot of us up way early this morning. So I think this is a really hot topic and something that a lot of us feel passionate about. And we want our voices heard, because we felt, especially in the southern region, a lot of us felt that what the division was proposing we could live with a ban on the transmitting cameras. And that's obviously changed, and that's why I think people are here. So I just would urge the board to go back to the original division's proposal, look at the survey that was presented. 66% were either supportive or neutral for allowing internal storage cameras. And if that survey represents the voting or the hunting public of Utah, I would ask why did we not vote to represent the hunting public of Utah? So thank you, guys.
Mark Thompson, followed by John Swan Adams.
Thank you for your time. This is a technology issue. When it comes right down to it, technology has taken over our hunting. And if we don't get control of that technology, we're going to lose our opportunity to hunt. I'm going to make a confession here. I did not plan on doing this. It's a dark confession, and it's from the other side. I've used cameras for 25 years, and I can't tell you how many big game animals, trophies I've killed with an advantage of those cameras. Not the cellular cameras, just the walk up to check the card cameras. This is a tough confession for me. I feel guilty. I feel like we need to get control of technology. I support your ban on the cameras, and I support there being a season. I can't count the trophies I've killed. I'm going to pick on my son a little bit. He's taken advantage of that same thing that I've taught him. We run 20, 50, 70 cameras. It's all for our benefit. And I know there are others in this room that do the same thing, but they're not willing to stand up here and confess what I'm confessing right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. John, followed by Lonnie Smith.
Board members, thank you. John Swan Adams, resident of Kaysville, representing myself. I do sit on Kaysville City Council, so I know sort of what you're going through right now. And I can say that having a crowd here, at least for me, when I'm sitting in your position, is one of my favorite things, to get people to come and comment. I think from everything that I'm hearing, if I were in your position, I would be looking at this as an opportunity to review what was proposed and what went through. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity for you to adjust what was voted on to only being those cameras that are wireless transmitting. I will share from a personal experience. Last year was the first year I did a trail camera, and it was such a fun opportunity for me to get my kids up to go check that camera. And one of my children said, "Hey, Dad, did you know there's cellular ones that you can get and you can just plug it in and we can just check it from our phones down here in Kaysville?" I said, "Hell no, we're not doing that. The whole point of this is to get you out and get out and go in the wilderness and check these things." We saw moose, we saw everything. So for me, I think this is a fantastic opportunity. I hope you take the chance to adjust it, and possibly down the future explore the option of eliminating them all if it's needed, if the data shows it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, John. Lonnie, followed by Bryce Castagnetto.
I just think your trail cameras, you're looking in the wrong area. If you're looking to cut down the success rate of people killing animals, you need to look at the rifles, the scopes, the bows, and stuff like that, instead of something that the whole family can use. And even guides. Look at the percentage of guides, a success rate of guides. They're selling the information, just like you're trying to ban selling pictures. The guides are selling the information about these animals. They got a higher success rate than the guy sitting a few cameras out there. Let's start looking at that instead of something the whole family can use. Thank you.
Thank you. Bryce?
Hello, my name is Bryce Castagnetto. I'm here representing myself, my wife, and my 4 sons. We all love hunting, very passionate about it. I have 3 main points I'd like to make with the board. First one would be my opinion of this trail camera thing.
Travis Hobbs will be our next, sorry.
I'm sorry?
Travis Hobbs will be our next speaker, sorry.
So I personally don't really care. I mean, I've used trail cameras for years, since 2007. Had a lot of fun doing that. I have been fortunate enough to harvest an animal that I had pictures of, but it was months later and nowhere near the area. No one else I know that uses cameras, and I know a lot of guys that do, has ever been able to do that. So I think that's been a common thing here. My concern was basically that what took place, and the reason most of us are here, is not because of we've talked a lot about the process. The process that took place has allowed us to come back here because I feel like a mistake was made. The public was misrepresented. Those surveys didn't account for everything that we've been talking about today. And it did suggest, the data was there to suggest that you do ban transmitting trail cameras, yet there was other stuff done. And that's wrong. That's flat out incorrect. If you follow the data and what the public want, that's not what happened. And I can't understand that. And it's unforgivable. Follow the data, follow the suggestion that the division is giving you. That's what we're here to do. If the public wants that, that's your job. Now, forgive me for speaking so directly to you, but I feel very strongly about that. The gross overreach of the board has gotten to a point where it needs to be put in check. And it's happened before. It can't happen again. Thank you for your time.
Travis, followed by Jesse Gardner.
Good news, Travis left early and I'm here. Sierra Nelson representing the Utah Wool Growers Association. I don't actually have any skin in this game. As long as you guys keep the exemptions in place that protect ag, do it, don't do it. I'm here to support the board. This is a day of your life that you're never going to get back. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you hearing the voices of the public. We appreciate all that you do for us. We stand behind your decision and we want you to know that we support you wholeheartedly and we support the division. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Jesse, followed by Steve Sorensen.
All right, good morning. So my comments are going to echo a lot of people's that have already happened this morning. Came down to represent myself. I'm kind of the average hunter. Work 40 plus hours a week. I don't have a lot of time to spend in the mountains. So the trail cameras are a scouting tool for me. I also have a family with kids that enjoy going out, helping set the cameras. I have a daughter that has some medical limitations to where she can't get to somewhere where my cameras are. But she's the very first one to sit on the couch with me when I get home from my scouting trips to look at the SD cards. So I usually stay really up to date with the proposals, what's going on in the RAC meetings, different entities with wildlife and throughout the state. But, I'll admit I was one of those ones that didn't go to those RAC meetings because when I saw it was the transmitting cameras, I was all for the ban. But, kind of caught me off guard when the data storing cameras were announced that they were going to be part of the ban. So just came out to kind of voice my opinion on it and ask the board to reconsider letting us use the trail cameras that we have to hike up in those mountains for and check ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Bad thing about going after Sierra, you got to raise this back up. I'm here representing myself and especially my kids. In my lifetime, I've seen deer tags in this state cut by 2/3. If it keeps trending like it's trending, my kids won't be hunting when they're my age, period. Looking at the survey, you guys nailed it the first time. You followed the public right down to a T. And I hope you do that again, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Steve. Tayson Purcell, followed by Michael Millward.
My name's Jason Purcell. I'm here to represent myself and basically my kids. A lot of people have been up here talking about use for hunting. Well, I'm on both sides of the fence. My trail cams are used for recreation. To see the enjoyment my 5-year-old son gets, when I say I'm going to go check trail cams, his response is, "Can I come? Can I come?" It's not, "Oh, see you later, Dad." It's the involving him with the outdoors. So now you put this ban in place. Now I have a tag, plus I use it for recreation. How are you going to enforce it? How are you going to determine it's not there for aid of hunting, but I'm using it to collect pictures of seeing bulls rutting, calves nursing on cows, the cows fighting, or coyotes or bears and seeing their cubs, all that stuff. So your original proposal was to ban transmitting trail cams. All for it. I attended a Utah Archery Association meeting. They talked about that. That's what you were going for. All for it. If it was on the agenda that it was going to be all the cameras for a season date, you bet me I would have been here voicing my opinion. Well, we have the opportunity now. I'm here voicing my opinion. So you want to talk about it hurts the wildlife. Well, I reached out to Casey Snyder when he first placed his bill asking for scientific data. Never got a response back. He put a post on Facebook, reached out to him again, nothing again. So you want to talk about limiting or making it more fair to wildlife, look at regulations, not just banning. Bear baits, you're allowed 2 if you're allowed that tag. Commercial hunting, aka outfitters, make them buy permits. They're only allowed 12 cameras, not 200 cameras. And anyone that's associated with that outfitter is also tied with it.
Thank you. Michael? Last comment card,
I knew I was
followed
last.
by Zach Allen.
Yeah, I need my
You were
full
the other
2 minutes.
winner.
I personally do not support the camera ban. I think the board and division has missed the boat on the process. And also those against the cameras missed the boat too. There's no data other than a survey. And obviously the survey showed we should have regular cameras. I'd like the board and division to make decisions based on data, not social and emotional reasons, or just based on a survey. You hear, irrational comments of put the hunt back in hunting, it's not unfair, emotional display of, there's dozens of cameras on every water hole. It's frustrating that there's no data behind it. If you go to the division's own data to show hunter success, it should show that increased technology has made it so the wildlife has gone down, that hunters are having so much success out there that we shouldn't have any more technology. So according to your own statistics since 2017, archery deer success, 20%, 23%. This is average of all units together. 20, 23, 17, 19, and 18% in 2021. More hunters in the field, more success, more time off with COVID. Muzzleloader, okay, the last 5 years, 36%, 39%, 29%, 32%, 36%. Muzzleloaders stayed the same. Rifle, 41%, 41%, 31%, 30%, back up to 40%. Lower success rate across the board. So if there's increased technology, which I wish there was, I've had plenty of success, but you would have to directly relate it to the motion camera makes it more successful, not the fact that I can shoot 1,400 yards with my 300 Win Mag, or the fact that I can shoot 800 yards with my muzzleloader. That success would need to go down to the motion camera that's sitting on a tree. How has that made me more successful and these other technologies haven't?
Thank you. Zach?
Looks like I should not go to Vegas anytime soon, being chose last out of this many people. I just want to start by thanking you guys for what you do. I think all of us here are passionate about wildlife and about trying to find ways to improve wildlife and have hunting for our children and all those things. And so I'm grateful you guys do take time out of your jobs and family to do this. That being said, I kind of echo what everyone has said here, being in support of trail cameras. I am against cellular trail cameras and have been since they've been in, come out. I never thought that was quite fair, but for a couple of reasons, and I hope I can get it here. One, I married into a family that doesn't hunt. They're not hunters, and it's been amazing to see the bridge that has been built to show them when I go out and checking trail cameras. I get them interested in seeing wildlife and seeing those different things and asking me questions and having more respect for hunting and for the animals and learning and asking questions. So I do think that it is one way to bridge that gap between hunters and non-hunters, which I think is important because we don't want hunting to go away and we want people that don't hunt to understand why we do. And I think that's a useful way, as well as teaching our new hunters. I also have a little boy that gets so excited to go with me, and that's an opportunity to go. I do think there are ways that we can manage the wildlife because I agree that it's going down. I hunt in South Cache, and my whole life I've only been able to hunt spike elk unless you draw it after 18 years, and then you get to shoot a big one, which I've had the opportunity to do both. So maybe there's other ways we can do it. Maybe we can limit, the size of deer you can shoot if you're over the age of 18. Maybe there's different things like that we can look at to move forward and help our deer and our elk populations. But I do not think that banning trail cameras and taking that opportunity away to bridge gaps and to teach new hunters is the way to do it. But I am grateful for you guys' research and hope that you can take this public comment and figure out the best thing to do for us. So thank you.
Thank you. What a incredible way to gather input and the opportunity we've had today. And just a few things that really stuck out to me. I do appreciate the youth that's been here today. Thank you. That's pretty incredible that your parents have included you in the importance of our natural resources. If you came with an opinion, hopefully you've heard other things today. Normally, when we come with opinion, it may be we listen to 10 people or 15, but we've had an incredible opportunity to listen for multiple hours of different opinions. Hopefully the board, our opinions have changed or softened, or viewpoints have changed, seen other sides. Hopefully the board heard many of these comments before, because we were doing our due diligence and studying the issues. But what I would ask of this group is, when we leave today, hopefully you will seek someone that has a different viewpoint and get their number, work with them, see some issues that you didn't like and work with them how to work. Hopefully it is really stuck in each of our craw to hear the issues that some of the landowners are facing, that pipelines are being ripped out, things are being damaged. The only person that can solve that is us personally. That's got to stop. We cannot do that. That is cutting our own throat. So let's work on that. The other issues, this group can make and has made wildlife in Utah great, but it is struggling. We have some major issues with people moving in the state. Where is all of the wildlife going to go? We've got some things to tackle. Let's work on that together. When we walk out the door, let's work on those issues. With that, I'm going to open it up for board discussion, but I just want to explain this process, because it is different than a normal wildlife board meeting, because this is an appeal. It is an appeal on the current motion. So after our board discussion, what we would do is we would look at the current rule in place and discuss that. After that discussion, I would ask if there's anyone that wants to change their vote. If anyone raises their hand that they want to change their vote, then I will ask for the motion that is currently on the books to be restated, and ask if there wants to be a second. If there is a second on that motion, then I will call for a vote from everybody. If by chance that motion fails, then what we would hear would be the motion that went through the RAC, and that would be the division's proposal of the transmitting cameras. And so, and then we would wait to see if there was a motion, a second, and then we would vote on that one. With that, I'm going to open it up to the Wildlife Board.
I guess I'll go first. I appreciated having the young individuals come today. I remember taking my kids up, checking. We didn't call them trail cameras because they were just a string across the trail that they broke, and they told you the first thing that crossed, and we thought that was the coolest thing. So I have heard that. I appreciate that. That was a memory I hadn't had in a long time. I think what you've seen today is what we've seen. We saw survey data that was 51%. We saw racks that were split. We saw a board that was a 4-3 vote. We've got a room here that is not in unity. I mean, it is split. I didn't keep track of it, but you now see what we're facing on this decision. There is not a wonderful step forward on this. No matter which vote we make today, there is somebody in this room that made a very valid point this morning, and a very valid point that we've heard multiple times. And that's because they're coming at what I listed about 5, reading all the emails, I listed about 5 different sides of this argument. And every one of them was valid. The most disappointing thing for me in this whole process is the comments that I heard of, I'm just going to do what I want, and then I'm going to damage property. That is tremendously disappointing to me in this whole process. That bothered me more than anything else. But I appreciate everybody being here. I would suggest to you that watch the proposals. I mean, very often we bring, as a board, we ask the DWR to put a proposal through the RAC process. And then even though we asked them to do it, we vote against it. And so that is a public process. It's put it in. I mean, I love that process. I started this process before this board was even a board. It was Board of Big Game Control in the 80s. Get involved, watch it, read it, listen to it on YouTube. Those things change. They do, and you want us to change that. You want this to be receptive, and there are things that get through the RAC process and get to here that have to happen now. This may not be one of them, but there are, and so those things are going to change. It's not deceptive. It's the process that we have. We're all just trying to do the best that we can. But I appreciate everybody today, and I'll be quiet.
I'll just take a minute. I do appreciate what I've heard today too, and what everybody has said. The youth that spoke. I want you to know that this is a tough decision for each of us because we are passionate about the wildlife. And I've always, 3 years ago when I was asked to join this board, I made the decision, if I make an error, it's going to be on the error of the resource. It's not going to be on the error of what I want, but it's going to be an error on the side of the resource. When I was young and starting out hunting, we didn't have trail cameras. When my boys were starting out with me hunting, we didn't have trail cameras. The first big game that I was able to take with my sons, I had a 4-year-old boy and a 5-year-old boy with me. Took an antelope with my bow. That was pretty amazing for me to do with them, and I appreciate them learning how to take care of wildlife properly and how to recognize the proper way to hunt things. I had a text from one of my boys. I got 4 boys. One of my boys just a little while ago, and he remembers following me around in my footsteps as we were scouting and hunting. And being outdoors with your kids is a big deal. It's a big deal. And so that's what I want to see keep happening is being able to have fathers and sons and daughters and wives and daughters and sons be out there with their family, hunting, scouting, seeing the wildlife, being able to build those memories, because that is important. That's what draws families together. I do appreciate what I've heard today. I've learned a lot. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could speak for a minute. There's been a lot today said about this process. And I want each of you to know, as well as the hundreds, if not thousands, that have reached out to the board over the last 45 days through email and text and phone. I appreciate you. The entire board appreciates you. I mean, it's a little exhausting sorting through that many different opinions and emails, but that is this process. And I appreciate everybody being engaged in it. I appreciated the gentleman that said, we all ought to be thankful that we have the ability to stand up here and share our opinion unencumbered to a board of policymakers. That is a great process. There has been a lot of discussion about, has that process been circumvented? As this appeal process, the reason we're here today, I don't agree with. There is a very low threshold of 10 people disagreeing with this board's decision, and we're back here making the same decision again. I don't agree with that, and I do hope we make some changes there. But that was not an attempt to circumvent the process. We want input from the public. I wish this meeting had happened in January. That's what I truly wish. And I think that's what a lot of you wish. The truth of it is, I don't blame this on unattended public. I don't blame this on the division. COVID's an easy target. I want to blame COVID for one reason. During COVID, we didn't have in-person meetings, and so we started having division presentations online. They weren't at the RAC and the board meetings. They were all online. And then we encouraged online comment. And I think we trained each other. I think we trained the public. Go online, watch the division recommendation. And that's what I think a lot of you did. I mean, that's what you said you've done. And I don't blame you for that. I think this was a unique situation. I don't think there was any ill intent here, guys. I hope you can appreciate that. The board wants input. I've been dreading this meeting. I didn't want this meeting to happen, even though I've been accused it was my fault. But I promise you, I didn't even know about the appeal process. But I'm glad now. I was dreading it when I walked in here, but I'm glad we had this meeting. Number one, I have a new hero in Shelby. Appreciate her taking time to be here. Number two, the public was heard. There was a lot of complaint that, yes, we went through an exhaustive process through the legislature, through the board, through the racks. This was the 7th time this board has heard about trail cameras. But I said it in the January meeting. If the public really believed there would have been an all-out ban on cameras, we would have heard from more people. We heard from a few dozen prior to the January meeting. We've heard from perhaps a few thousand prior to this. And for that, I am grateful. I appreciate, I know the hardship it's been for you guys to come here, and I appreciate the input. That is the process. We are public officials, and it is up to us to hear from the public. So I just want to thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I know I'm going on. I'll move on. I do have a concern though, guys, and it was brought up here a few times. There's just a lot of tribalism going on in our little hunting community and a lot of division. And quite frankly, that scares me worse than government overreach and a lot of other things. And I appreciate those of you that have addressed it. Guys, we're all on the same team. And if we forget that, I mean, there is a group of people out there that are laughing at us, that said, you know, we don't even have to worry about Utah. They're gonna rip themselves apart from the inside. Guys, we are on the same team. And I hope regardless of the vote, when we walk out of here today, we can remind ourselves we're on the same team and there is no room in this for hate. There is no room in this to discount and minimize other people's opinions. There were valid opinions across the board here today. And I appreciate you guys showing up and sharing them with us. So again, I know it's a common theme, but thank you for your input.
Thanks, Wade. I didn't want to have to give you the 2 minutes.
You can't give me 2, thankfully.
In January, I was torn on my boat. I thought that was over. Thanks to kids.
Oh, good. Sorry, nobody can hear me. In January, I was torn. I thought that was over. I thought I was not torn anymore. I'm still torn. I'm still torn from all the comments. I've watched over my lifetime of on the desert, on the forest, in the mountains, on private ground, on public ground, everywhere you go, where it used to be a 2-track road where a Jeep or a 4-wheel drive truck went. Now we have 4-wheelers and side-by-sides, and what used to be a 2-track road has to have a sign on it, closed, and they go around the sign and they go up in a little basin somewhere and they tear things up. And the first guy makes a track, and the next guy sees the track and thinks it must be a road. And pretty soon, it's a mess. And a few bad actors ruined it for everybody else. Partly because there's so many people in this state. There's been a comment about how you know, if this technology was so good, then why haven't the numbers come up? I think Steve Sorensen mentioned there's a third of the deer in the state, or at least a third of the deer hunters. We went from, when I was a kid, 240,000 deer hunters to 74,000 last year. Maybe that has something to do with the population or the reason we're not all successful. There's not enough deer. And it's been mentioned that our people numbers are skyrocketing. We can all see that by the development everywhere we go. If the deer herds hadn't crashed, we'd have more success. I hear the kids. I've taken my kids with the cameras. I think that's awesome. My hat goes off to these kids. we can still do it. There's still a season. We can still do that. No, it's not as long. No, it's not as good, but we can still go look for the animals that we got pictures of in July. We can still go in September. No, they're not, might not be the same place. Everybody said that. Back to this vandalism. A few bad actors that wreck water systems. We have 16 miles of water systems on our ranch. Without those, imagine a 100-degree day and a bunch of cows without a drink. Just because of a bad actor. And if this ban can help that kind of thing, I'm sorry to the multitude, but we've got to get control of this. Rules have to be put in place. Signs have to be put up to stop the bad actors. But the reason why I don't like the fact that we're all here. The northern and the southern rack was the first two that passed this full camera ban. There was 2 other racks after that. People say they didn't have a chance to be heard. Yeah, they did. We just wasn't paying attention. And I think this is going to teach us how to pay attention. Now, if we stay with the motion that we made in January, and those of us, and I voted against that motion, but if we that lose go home and lick our wounds and try it for a while, we can come back. The process says we can come back a year or 2 or 3 or whatever. So, and I love what Wade has said, that we're all in this thing together. You know, the sportsmen and agriculture need to be together, because there's a group of people out there that want to do away with all of us. And if sportsmen and agriculture don't come together, we're after the same things. So we need to help each other with vandalism. We need to help each other with permits. We need to help each other with livestock on the range. Remember that the years that the domestic sheep were the biggest was also the years that the mule deer were the biggest. I mean, the most, in the 50s and 60s. So if we all work together, we can come to a solution that hopefully we can all live with.
Thanks, Brett. Gary?
I appreciate you guys for coming. It's hard to blow out a day of work and come express, and it's hard to do it in front of all these people. I mean, there's a lot of things that are hard about this, but I appreciate you feeling strongly enough about it to come spend time and do it. About a lot of the same reasons you guys really like trail cameras are the very same reasons I like trail cameras. I love to see the animals. I love to see the stuff. I love to keep an eye on stuff that's around when I can't be there, because it's getting hard to be a lot of places. You know, the state's divided up now into different units, so we're not hunting in our backyards like we used to. And so it makes it a more successful, more doable thing for me to actually keep track of what's on the landscape. I completely get that. That being said, we got to start somewhere, guys. The people that say that I've never, it doesn't help me hunt, I don't buy that. I don't. That's the very reason we've been very successful, is because we've had the ability to maintain eyes on what's around. I mean, it does increase success rates. It does increase success rates for very specific target animals. The do-it-yourself hunters, I think this will create an opportunity for them to actually access and see and get and possibly harvest some of those big bad boys that they never get a chance to because they always get sniped off. And I'm not against people that hunt hard. That's okay. I mean, I don't, we hit the ground pretty hard where I go, but we gotta start somewhere. We got to start somewhere. The kids and stuff, I like that. I mean, I raised my boys in the mountains. We didn't have trail cameras back then. Well, we had one, and it got 12 pictures of a bird and 1 picture of wind. Now, that was back when you had to take the film down and get it developed. And so that was back in the early days, but just the time out. I applaud you guys for taking your kids out. They'll teach them, they'll actually inherit your love for the wild. And that's what we need to do. That's the part that needs to happen. You know, the season, people talk like it's a ban. It's not a ban. You know, you can do this half the year and then still get out and see the stuff you had pictures of early on. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea, but I appreciate you speaking your minds. Thank you very much.
Bryce?
Guess I'm last. I too appreciate everybody that's came. I've got numerous friends with a differing opinion than I do. Hopefully they're still my friends tomorrow, but you know, we've had lots of conversations, and I respect all the opinions in here. To address, I mean, I think it was great that you brought your daughter today. I've got 5 kids, 3 daughters, 2 boys, had them all out in the hills hunting. My kids have never ran a trail camera, and they love the outdoors just as much as anybody. They love to go out. So, I mean, I kind of hesitate that if we get rid of cameras, I mean, what are we teaching our kids? I mean, we can still take our kids into the outdoors. We can still use those cameras if you guys want. It's a season. I mean, it's not an outright ban. Those kids can still go out there. It's just, you've heard multiple times today, everybody says, I've never used the camera to harvest an animal. I've never. Well, obviously they're pretty effective because there's a lot of passionate people about their cameras. So I wish we could all maybe sacrifice a little bit for a few months, put our cameras away. Speaking on the process, I mean, the survey, they did a survey. I believe if we did the survey again, we'd get this, you know, the same. We surveyed the general public that buys the hunting license. We're not just surveying, going over to Farmington Station and surveying, you know, people that don't hunt. We're surveying the people that buy these licenses. 50% said they support the Nevada style. 40% said they didn't. So, I mean, that being said, I still think we've gone through the process. We surveyed people. We've gone through the racks. The division's made recommendations numerous times. I mean, I remember back when I was on the rack, I served on the rack for 8 years. Justin Shannon made recommendations. And numerous times I'm like, God, what an idiot. Why did he make those recommendations? You know, I love him today, but I mean, we disagreed, you know, we disagreed. And it was the beauty of it. We talked and, you know, numerous times we've made, you know, our vote has gone against the division's recommendations. And it will in the future. Numerous times, I guarantee you it's going to happen a lot that we make votes against the division's recommendations. You know, I hope that, you know, we could probably address this appeal thing because, I mean, we're going to have, instead of 10 or 12 of these meetings a year, we're going to have probably 30 of them. But I didn't love that. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make stick with my recommendation. And my reasoning behind it is I want to look out for that little girl's future of hunting. And I want to make sure that one day that we don't cut these deer tags from 70,000 down to 30,000. Because to me, that's going to jeopardize, we're going to lose a lot of hunters. We're going to lose a lot of recruitment, you know, and that's one of the biggest things. We've got to be able to find ways to increase the availability for people to go out and hunt, because hunting once on a general season every 5 or 6 years, that's not going to cut it. People are going to get sick of that. Drawing a tag once every, that I've heard, every 20, 25 years, that's not going to cut it. We're going to lose people. So I think we got to be aware of that and be considerate and all be, not selfish. And I mean, I'll give in on a few things for the good of the resource and in the future. So those are my thoughts.
One thought I'll share with you comes back from this fall. This fall, I had one of the best outfitters in the state call and say, hey, we're taking a young girl that's never hunted before. We see there's a buck in your field and in the field across. Would it be possible that we stalk through your field to harvest this animal? This person that they were guiding, they weren't doing it for money. In fact, they had taken a day off from probably big time clients to fulfill a little girl's dream. When I got home for lunch, there was probably 70-mile-an-hour winds, and I seen this little girl and a group of people with the same goal to help her out in my field. It was really heartwarming because it wasn't some of what we heard today of the top guide after the top animal. It was someone with the same point of view that I have. Let's help our youth. That was awesome for me to watch. We had them, my wife had them in for some hot chocolate after, and she said that was a pretty special conversation to see not only them helping this little girl, but those outfitters had their sons and daughters there teaching them the same thing that we teach our kids. That was awesome for me to see. Today, when we leave, we shouldn't be looking at it's just the guide and me, little Joe. We're all the same. We do it because we love it. We need to walk out of this room with those same views. I don't know how the board's going to vote today, but what I would share with you in the past couple months, what my wife and children have had to go through with some of the threats has been horrible. I ask that whatever these board members vote today, that won't happen, because we don't need that to happen again. Let's work beyond it, pull together, and I'll ask the wildlife board if anyone wants to change their vote.
I'd be willing to change my vote. Oh, no more than that. I want to change my vote.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, with that, I'm going to call for a motion.
I'd like to restate my original motion. I move that we make it illegal to place, maintain, or use trail cameras transmitting or non-transmitting from July 31st to December 31st for the take or aid of taking big game animals on public or private property. Exemptions are ag operations using cameras for the monitoring take of nuisance animals, or in cases of depredation on active agriculture operations by operators or their agents on public or private ground. An employee or an authorized agent of the state of Utah or federal government are exempt. A person may not use any night division device to locate or attempt to locate a big game animal from 48 hours before any big game hunt in that area through 48 hours after any big game hunt in that area. Engage in the sale of purchase of trail camera media, including images, video, location, time, or data to aid in the take or attempted take of big game. Engage in the sale, purchase, distribution, or storage of media, including images, video, location, time, or data collected from a device identified in subsection A to take in the take or attempted take of big game.
Thank you. Any questions on the motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second it again.
Okay. Any discussion?
We have just a little bit of discussion, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address the fact that today in this room, this issue wasn't very evenly split. I actually did keep track, and it's almost 4-1. But I want you to know that throughout the past 50 days, this issue has been very evenly split through the thousands that were surveyed and the thousands that emailed and called and text. This issue is extremely even across the state. And so I hope that we can leave enough air in the room to allow for others' opinions and realize that half the hunters out there in the world don't agree with me. I mean, I'm on this issue. 2 years ago, I ran for county commission in my county and was elected. And the only reason I did it was to promote small government and to just look at overreach and regulation. Having said that, that is the role of government, is to regulate. I don't think we all have issues with that. It's that over-regulation I think we start to get a little too squirmy about. And there is a need for regulation. We have it through everything, especially in our little world, in our community, in the hunting community. Everything is regulated. And that is a good thing. I believe that trail cameras ought to be regulated. I really do. However, on this, I kind of draw the line for me at the division's recommendation. And so I respect everybody else's opinion on this, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate the fact that I hope we all do understand, even though today it probably wasn't very instructive, this is very evenly split throughout our community.
Thanks. Any other discussion? Okay, I will call for a vote, starting with Bryce.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes. And that's all the agenda items. And so with that, we will close the meeting. Thank you all for coming.